that occur many times a day. And whereas tics experienced by persons with TS are classified as simple or complex. Simple tics are sudden, brief, repetitive motions or vocalizations, including eye blinking, shoulder shrugging, repetitive throat clearing, or grunting sounds. And whereas more than 20,000 school-age children in New Jersey are suffering from TS, and there is no standard treatment or known cure for the disorder. And whereas raising public awareness of TS and educating physicians, other healthcare professionals, and school personnel about the condition will help to improve the quality of life of all people touched by TS and encourage the research necessary to identify the cause of TS, control its effects, and find a cure for the disorder. Now, therefore, I, Mary Jane Canos, Mayor of the Borough of Bernardsville, do hereby proclaim June 9th, 2020 to be recognized as Tourette Syndrome Awareness Day in Bernardsville. All right, thank you. So we are good on that. And I'll make sure Ms. gets a copy because this was part of her project. Okay. And now we have, I think, oh, there's Chris. I don't know, is Phil here as well? Oh, you're mute. There you go.
Phil's not here yet, no, but that's fine.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello.
What I had asked and I had sent earlier, we had asked Chris to do a short summary of the redevelopment plan. I know you all have the full copy and most of you sent on your questions, and I believe Chris incorporated them. So hopefully you got a copy of the abbreviated version, but I just wanted Chris to just give us a real quick kind of update on how it came about and what's in it and how it's going to be used.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Hello, members of council. Odd to see you again now this way, but it's good to be back here. As the mayor said, yeah, we've been working on this 65 Morristown Road redevelopment plan for several months now. I think in a really positive and productive way with the Downtown Redevelopment Committee, which includes members of council and members of the public. So since everyone has the cheat sheet in their inbox, I'm going to sort of spare you the details of those things, but I will just spend a minute sort of rehashing some of the stuff onto on the summary. So just history-wise, like if you'll recall, you all passed a resolution, or the council rather passed a resolution last year directing the planning board to do a study about the area needed redevelopment. We did that study. That work was completed at the end of 2019. The property was declared area needed redevelopment. Beginning in around February, we started working on this redevelopment plan, and here we are today with hopefully an introduction of the ordinance approving it. I think this is the first redevelopment plan in Bernardsville, at least in a while. So just a redevelopment plan is zoning for a property, like at its most simple, like you're changing the zoning for this property. If it was multiple properties, you would be changing the zoning for multiple properties. But to boil down everything that's in there into what are we doing most simply, we're changing the zoning for a property. So, you know, there's a lot of different configurations that could come out of this plan. We think all of them good, but the plan is written in such a way to allow a lot of different types of reuses. There's an incentive in there that allows a greater residential density and a slightly more lot coverage if someone provides a building that has a ground floor retail and restaurant use, but other uses that are included in there for potentially reuse of the existing building are different restaurant uses, retail uses, art galleries. There's a whole long list. We do have design standards in there, and design standards are kind of funny because on one hand they can look very prescriptive, but we really look at them as a baseline for making sure that the community gets a building of like the aesthetic type that it wants, and we really tried to have those mirror or reflect like the architectural quality that exists in Bernardsville now. Besides the building, there is some language in there which we can talk about more later if you want, about site design, As you know, that part of Morristown Road doesn't really have sidewalks, so there's some specifics in terms of sidewalk dimensions and specifics in terms of what types of spaces should be in between the building and the sidewalk. There's a whole section, a couple paragraphs on type of public space that might be there, seating, landscaping, and things of that nature. Importantly, the sort of big process point in here is that even if a redevelopment plan is adopted, there's a necessary step which is written into the plan, which is authorizing a redevelopment agreement. And that redevelopment agreement, this is near the end, this is like page 37 or so of the plan. That redevelopment agreement as an attachment would have a lot of details about the specific project, the floor plans, elevations, renderings, all of those things. So you as the council, provided or assuming you choose to introduce and then adopt the redevelopment plan before a project actually makes it to the planning board, you then have to approve a redevelopment agreement where you will actually have, rather than sort of like parameters like are in the plan, the details of a specific project. One last note on procedure, and then I'll pause. It is an ordinance. So if you choose to introduce the ordinance this evening, the next step would be it would go to the planning board. Planning board's review would be to determine whether or not it's consistent with the master plan. We consulted the master plan in drafting it, so we believe it is. Should they determine it to be consistent, the plan would come back here for potential adoption and for a public hearing. So that's sort of what I have to say by way of introduction. As the mayor said, I appreciate the comments that we received. We did incorporate, I'd say, the lion's share of them. If we didn't incorporate them and you want to ask a specific question about them, that's what we're here for. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Phil, did you want to add anything? I see you there.
I think Chris did a great job. We're happy to answer any questions the council might have.
Okay. No, I know it was quite a document to read, and I appreciate you all taking the time to look at it and give your comments. So,
I have a question, if I could. So I had raised the issue, and thank you for incorporating some of the other comments that I had made. But I had raised the issue about arcades, and apparently we have an ordinance in town that would limit any arcade to only 4 machines, which would make that financially not really viable. So if we were at some future date, in fact, I was hoping we could start the process now, but it didn't make it on the agenda. But if we were at a future date, overturn that ordinance that would permit arcades, something like Yestercades in Somerville or Game Vault in Morristown, would that be able to be incorporated into this plan, or do we have to go through the process all over again?
So we most likely you would need to amend this plan, largely because in theory we could create a definition of an arcade, because your code, obviously, because these things are not really contemplated in the underlying code, like the use as an arcade or I think it was an amusement or something is in the other part of the code, but not the zoning code. We'd have to make sure that there's a defined term. And if not, we have to define it in the redevelopment plan and include it here as a permitted use. So as you might know, I'm also the planner in Morristown, and I was part of the Game Vault approval. And there we had the same exact issue come in, where we had to not only amend parts of the zoning code, but these sort of somewhat antiquated parts of the other code, where back to like the 1970s when, zoning, when arcades were places for a bunch of punks to hang out and cause trouble. So that's why they limited, pinball machines and things like that to four machines per establishment. So to answer your question directly, if it's not listed as a permitted use, and Chris, I'm not sure where we landed with that. Maybe, we wanted to have this discussion, realizing that there were some other obstacles in the code, and maybe we left it at that. So, we'll take the council's direction.
Could we list it as a permitted use in this document, and in the meantime, in parallel?
Yeah, the only thing I would ask procedurally, and I believe your solicitor is probably on, just that Mr. Pigeon, I see him here. Hi, hey
yes.
Jack. That we can, almost by voice, incorporate, as like an at table amendment into the ordinance, that we're introducing this with the inclusion of amusement, an amusement type use. I just don't want to have to go through the process of reintroduction if it could be avoided.
Yes.
And nor do I. And
Nor do I.
It's the last bullet point, I guess, under prohibited uses, where it says anything that's not mentioned as a
Right.
permitted use is prohibited, and that really kind of raised a red flag for me. I think
Sure.
the arcades, as we've seen them, very, very successful, very popular. It's great for the kids, which we have very little here for that age group, and plus young adults to do. It has revitalized parts of towns that have done that. I'd like to see that in there, and then we could take care of the zoning ordinance after the fact.
Well,
Yeah, I have no.
as Phil said, it's not even a zoning ordinance, it's a general police power ordinance, so we could do that concurrently.
And
Okay.
Mr. Pigeon, are you comfortable with us kind of, if the council introduces this with like almost like conditions, that we would have the flexibility to put that into the code as long as the intent of the council is clear to have an amusement. And I could go back to the underlying code and read you the exact type of use, but that the type of use contemplated in that general police power ordinance, amusement center or whatever that use might be called, that if they kind of say that we're going to introduce this code with adding an amusement center to the list of permitted uses, that you'd be comfortable with that?
Yes, because you can, as you know, you can introduce an ordinance in title only. Now, I
Okay.
think we should add the language to the redevelopment plan, prior to the publication by Anthony.
Yes.
Okay.
Chris, you see any issues with this?
No, as long as it's good procedurally, it sounds great.
Yeah.
Is the council in agreement that nobody has an issue with an arcade? We're all
I
good?
don't personally.
I don't.
Okay, so I think, yeah, we've got consensus that that would be an acceptable use. So if we can introduce the ordinance with that amendment, I think that'd be fine.
And we're introducing the ordinance, so we're actually voting on passing it at our next meeting. Is that right?
When I think after the planning board reviews it.
I'm sorry, actually, I did have a question about the planning board then. The planning board has a maximum of 30 days to review it and respond to us. Is that correct, Jack?
35.
35 days. And so then this would appear on our July 13th meeting then. Is that
Yeah.
be right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what it says in on the introduction.
Okay.
All right, anybody else have questions for Chris or Phil?
Yeah, Mary Jane, I had asked, and I don't know if this was updated or not, but in the residential piece of it, the affordable housing was only 15% for this location. Is that for a specific reason?
That's standard for rentals.
Right. That defers almost to your municipal underlying ordinance, your inclusionary zoning. So it would be 15% for rental or 20% for owner occupied housing.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
It's from the code regulation and it's been carried forward, those percentages.
Okay.
So I think the key point here is it's not any different for this than it would be for any other place.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay. And then I don't know if we added permitted uses for like a performing arts theater or a community center. I had put that in my.
I think we did go ahead and do
We
that.
put those in, yes.
Okay. Okay. Perfect.
And I think the other thing you had asked was about a traffic study, and I think you put it in as leaving it up to the planning board if they want to do it, not specifying it. Isn't that
We gave the planning board the right to waive the traffic study.
Right.
Based
They
on
can
the
waive it.
testimony.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
anyone else?
I
Questions?
see Joe DeMarco's hand is raised.
Oh,
So
yes,
he
it
might-
is.
Yes,
Okay.
I will
Hey, Anthony, how are you?
hi.
No, I was just weighing in if you needed me, just to let you know I was here for the plan.
Okay. All right, we're good on that. So thank you guys for coming. If you want to hang around until we introduce it, just for a comfort level, that's fine.
We will.
We like having you here.
Good to be here.
Thank you. Well, we now have an open session, so if members of the public would like to speak, please keep your comments to 3 minutes. Anthony, if you see Anthony Siriano, he will hold up a timer so you can see how long you're speaking. Please identify, give us your name and where you live. And if you have anything written, make sure that Anthony gets a copy of it if you're reading from a statement. So go to participants if you want to speak and click on find your name and raise your hand. There's a little thing, a little icon to raise your hand if you'd like to speak. Do you see any hands raised? I'll give you a few minutes. Anyone from the public?
Yeah.
Oh, I see Becky.
Hi, Anthony, I sent you something earlier.
Hang on, wait a minute. Becky's got her hand up, so Ed, hang on a second.
Sure.
Hi,
Is unmuted.
Hi, Becky.
I'm here tonight representing, my name is Rebecca Perkins, and I'm representing Healthier Somerset, which is a coalition of approximately 50 organizations in Somerset County. It's public, private, and nonprofit organizations all dedicated to public health. Complete Streets is a policy that Healthier Somerset has supported really since its inception over 10 years ago. And we'd like to congratulate Bernardsville tonight on becoming the 16th municipality in Somerset County to adopt a Complete Streets resolution. It's something that I think is very much in keeping with actually some aspects of the redevelopment proposal that you just talked about and some of the other plans that you have. And certainly in light of the COVID situation and a lot of the open air activities that we're going to be seeing, there's a lot more relevance perhaps than you might have seen even just a few weeks ago. So again, we're very grateful to Bernardsville for the time you've taken to review this and for your support for the resolution. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Becky. Nice to see you, meet you, whatever. And now Ed would like to speak. Are you still there, Ed? Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Oh, Ed, battle.
So it's about the farmers market, staying at the pool area if possible. I think the farmers liked it. I think most of the residents really liked it. And the advantage is that all of our farmers, not just the ones who applied, all of our farmers can get a chance. And I think that's a nice thing to do. We have extra farmers that we've built up because of the winter market and because of the room that we found for them at the train station. But now with COVID, the situation is that we have to ask some of them to not come, or to what I'm trying to get them to do is to agree to fluctuate 1 week from the next with others. And some of them are willing to do that, but some of them aren't. And I think this would be a nice incentive to make all of them happy to have a place. Also, I think it's a benefit for the town. I think the town likes it. Going back to the train station, we would then resume our policy of trying to boost the downtown area in July 4th, which would be kind of a good demarcation for making that change back. So that's my proposal, and I'd certainly like to hear your opinions because I want to share them with the farmers as well as soon as I can.
And you're asking for just 2 more weeks or 1 more week at the pool?
It would be 3. I'm asking up to July 4th, which would be the 13th, 21st, and 27th.
Okay.
And then Ed, would you go back to after the 4th, where would you go?
Back to the train.
You go back to the train station? Okay.
At the 4th, we would open at the train station, and I think that would be a great way to open because we'd be doing it for the 4th of July. So that's kind of, a lot of attention is paid to that date, and so it's a good marker. So,
And, Ed, I want to say thank you for changing your location on such short notice. You did a beautiful job. It was smooth as silk, and people were very happy with the whole setup. It was really well done. So thank you. for that.
I think there's a hand up. I think Sven, Steve, is that you?
Steve
Go
is
ahead, John.
again.
So with the pools being able to be open the 22nd, the rec committee is going to meet tomorrow regarding, the guidelines that are going to be presented. I think we're going to push to try to open up as soon as possible. And I think, if we can be before July 4th, we're going to.
Be open by the 4th, yeah. And I think that's what Ed's saying is they want to just get the couple of weeks while we're getting ready if we're opening the pool.
Is he saying he wants to do it through the 4th, like the 4th that Saturday as well, or?
No.
Okay.
Yeah,
Up to,
just
but not including.
weeks. Yeah, he'd go back on the 4th to the train station.
I'm reading into it a little bit that the governor said the 22nd because he thought people would want a few weeks to turn on the water, to make sure everything is right, and open up on the 4th. I think that's my feeling also. It's why I'm suggesting the 4th as well.
Yeah, I mean, we have a couple of weeks there's definitely a couple of weeks to get the pool open, so that it might work out timing-wise perfect. But I thought you were saying you wanted to have it there the weekend of the 4th as well, which, we would definitely hope to be open by then.
No.
Perfect.
No.
Okay, so anybody have a problem with keeping it there for the next couple of weeks?
No, I think it's a great plan. Actually, it went so well at the pool. I recommended to Ed that as long as the pool was closed, we ought to use it. And by the way, I think we ought to highlight Ed's Herculean effort. I volunteered at crowd control, I guess, at the market, and all the vendors were very happy. But Ed put this all together in 2 days, or made all the changes in just a couple days. So I think he deserves a real tip of the hat.
Thank you, Ed. That's a great job.
Yep.
Thank you.
Can I just ask one question? Is it maybe something we should think about to move it to the high school parking lot? Because that has a lot more space potentially.
I don't think we can. As I understood from Bob Baker, who's on the head of the school board, that's not a possibility. But I don't know. Jackie leaned forward. I don't know. Am I reading into it?
I had to unmute myself. Yeah, it would be up to the school board.
Bob was there as a volunteer as well, and he was very happy with the increased space. You may want to approach him again, or school board again. But to the point you made earlier that you had more vendors, how are you going to fit them into the footprint for the train station?
Well, I was hoping that if the council and the mayor approve this, that they would say specifically, and that's one of the other things that would help me, and I think help them, to recognize that this is just a one-time event, and we have to, in order to fit into the parking space at the train station, they will have to make adjustments, and not everyone can come. And I would like some kind of proper wording to that effect, because it is their livelihood, and some of them do very well, but they need some kind of formal statement. I think is very helpful than just coming from me. I don't know if Kevin Valentine's there, but I think at one time Kevin said, if you have any problem with it, just tell them, talk to me. But I think it might be nicer. It might be nicer to have something in the resolution, or however you're going to do it, that says that this assumes that we're going back to the train station, where the smaller footprint needs their cooperation, and not everyone can come every Saturday. Something to that effect.
Okay, we can do that. If you want something more official, yeah, we can have it come from us instead of you, so you're not on the hook.
Not that I'm on the hook. I don't know if they.
Well, as a volunteer, you don't have to,
Yeah, exactly.
take the grief that the farmers give you. So
Yeah.
yeah. So we'll talk. Let me know what you want to convey to them, and we'll put something together for you.
Well, I guess we first have to find out, because Charlie Zavala, who's not on the call, said please call.
Dave Polakevich is on.
Right, but Charlie asked me to, because, they all don't do exactly the same thing, and David could pass it on to Charlie, but Charlie wanted me to make sure that I pass it on to him in language that he could then put into the newspaper, because he has the deadline tomorrow. So if the board, the council, I should say, the council and the mayor approve this, then I can tell him that. So that's all I really need tonight, and the wording for whatever else would be useful. That doesn't have to be done tonight. And this doesn't have to be done tonight. All I really need is that statement to give to Charlie.
You mean the statement saying that you can keep the next 3 weeks will be at the pool?
Yes.
Okay. Are we good with that? I think everyone was okay. Any problems?
That sounds good. Do we need to say like A or do a voice vote or something?
Yeah, I would do a motion.
Yeah, I mean, my only thing is, I mean, I think when, if the pool is going to open, they did say we would need 4 weeks to open it. So that would take us through that 27th weekend. But if the pool is able to be open sooner, for some reasons, if certain repairs aren't able to be done, then I don't know if it would run into that weekend and then the pool's open at the same time that the farmer's market's there. That would be my only concern.
Well, the motion can have a caveat that through that weekend unless the pool opens sooner.
Well, as I understood it, and I forgot who was talking about being on the rec committee. As I understood it, the governor specifically said that he was going to release his approval on the 22nd, but the rec committee, at least one person on the rec committee mentioned that they were going to wait to see what he said. They were not going to go ahead now and start to activate work on the pool without knowing what was in his statement, which is not coming out to the 22nd, which is why I felt comfortable making the ask.
Okay, yeah. I mean, his guidelines are supposed to come out tomorrow for the pools, but it is supposed to take 4 weeks to open the pool. It is supposed to. I mean, even from the day that they say go, if we say go, then it is supposed to take 4 weeks to get the pool open between painting and repairs and opening and whatever else has to go on. So, but that would be the only thing, is if they're able to get it done faster. I don't know if they can or not, then that would be 3
You can actually, you could open on the 22nd, but I don't think we won't be ready to open on the 22nd.
Right.
But we don't know what the guidelines are going to be yet,
Right.
and what that's going to look like and how we can make it work. So that's what we're waiting for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Jack's simple solution is an easy one. Just say, pending, Jack, what you said. Does that work?
Yes.
What would Jack Vision say?
Through the 27th with the caveat that, end sooner if the pool opens before then.
Yeah, I mean, you could even say in the unlikely event that the pool opens sooner, the pool will take precedent. I think, the Councilwoman McCready's point is well taken. I just think in practical terms, it seems unlikely that we'd have that conflict.
It does, for sure. It does.
So let me talk about impracticalities then, because we had the parking lot situation where the parking lot was not going to be paved, and then suddenly was going to be paved on the day the farmer's market was there. So that's an awkward situation to, at the last minute, tell people who are growing things and they have to get them out of the ground that what do they do with them? I
think they add the decision for the pool, won't, it's not like, if the pool was going to open before the 27th, which is really the only date that's in question, I think we would know that in the very near future, because we'd have to start actions almost immediately. So that the 27th date is the only one that's at risk, I think. And I just think that, we would know probably, within a week, whether or not that date was going to be at any kind of risk.
Okay, no, that's fair. All I'm getting at is that that's a big space up there. And it seems to me that it would be possible to move and this would be, I think, very agreeable to the farmers, as long as you think it's agreeable to the people who are parking at the pool, to take some of the space up by the tennis court, but I don't know if the tennis courts aren't supposed to be used. So in other words, there's a lot of space up there. There's grass. So in other words, I would like that kind of understanding that, sure, we'll give up the space for the pool, but we could fit into a comparable space up there.
And I think that's really reasonable. And as you were going through the sort of the benefits of doing it at the pool, one of the things that I know that several of us would like to see is the polo grounds used more for different things. So like you're saying, there's lots of space up there, whether it's grassy space or parking lot space, that we probably could find an accommodation if we had to in an unlikely circumstance.
And I will say that the farmers, although it was a big change from the map that I had laid out for them, and they're used to adapting to different spaces. I mean, they have to. You know, they're in different spaces all over New Jersey, so that's not a problem. Good. Okay.
Okay. So can we have a motion? Somebody want to make a motion to approve the next 3 weeks, unless under some unlikely circumstances we'll use the parking lot, unless the pool opens. But
I'll move that.
I'll second it.
Accommodate the plan for 3 weeks at the pool.
And I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. You're good, Ed.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Anyone else from the public wish to be heard? Just click on participants and then hit the raise your hand icon. I do not see anyone. You see anyone, Anthony?
No, I don't see anybody.
Okay, then I will close the public session and we'll move on to our ordinances. I will open the public hearing on Ordinance 2020-1842, appropriating the sum of $125,780 for the milling, paving, and striping of Meeker Road, Mount Harmony Road, and Lakeview Road. Would anyone from the public like to be heard on this ordinance? Please raise your hand on the participant list. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Christine, would you like to move it?
I move to pass ordinance number 2020-1842 on final reading and adopt as published.
Give a second.
I'll second.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Donahue,
Yes.
Mr. Hammond,
Yes.
Ms. McCready,
Yes.
Mr. McQueen,
Yes.
Roday,
Yes.
Ms. Zamara.
Yes.
Okay, who would like to move this ordinance? Does this come under Public Works? Probably. Christine, you want to move it?
I'll move it. I think it's planning board, but I move that ordinance 2020-1843, an ordinance concerning uses permitted in the I Industrial District and amending Chapter 12 of the Borough Land Development Code entitled Zoning, be introduced by title, passed on first reading, and published according to law, and that a public hearing be scheduled for a meeting beginning at 7 p.m. on Monday, June 22nd, 2020.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstention? Okay.
Mayor, if I just may, I note that the second meeting is scheduled for the 22nd. And as we discussed earlier, the planning board has 35 days to review this. So it may not be ready on the 22nd.
Change
If
it
it's
to
not ready, can we just carry it? Jack, can we just carry it if it's not ready?
Well, now you've got to open the public hearing and then continue it pending receipt from the planning board. So it's up to you all.
Yeah, I mean, look, knowing what it's important, but the priority is currently in the planning board, and the fact that they have really one meeting because the agenda is already out for this Thursday. I would say the likelihood of them getting this done before the 35-day period is probably low. So I think it's probably more prudent to schedule it after the 35-day review period.
Or do we need to move it again with the right date and make it the 13th?
Yeah, I would amend the introduction just to make the second reading on July 13th.
Do we have an external deadline, Jack, that we need to adhere to?
think it was 60 days in the settlement agreement, but
60 days from when, Jack?
from the settlement agreement, I think, but we'll still be fine.
Okay, so,
Move it again.
a motion to amend it, to move it as amended.
I'll move as amended. Ordinance 2020-1843. With the new,
Yeah, be introduced and.
be introduced by title, passed on first reading, published according to law, and then a public hearing be scheduled on, but
July 3rd.
beginning
July
at 7
13th.
p.m. on Monday, July 13th, 2020.
Okay, we have a second on that, on the amended.
I'll second it again.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you for bringing that up, Jack.
Yeah, thanks.
Oh, here we go. Here's the ordinance. John, why don't you move this one?
Bear with me here. I move that ordinance 2020-1844, ordinance of the Borough of Bernardsville, County of Somerset, New Jersey, adopting the redevelopment plan for Block 125, Lot 13, as shown in the official tax map in the Borough of Bernardsville pursuant to the local redevelopment and housing law, NJSA 40A:12A, et Esquire, Audi site, be introduced by title, passed on first reading, published according to law, and the public hearing be scheduled for a meeting beginning 7 p.m. Monday, July 13th, 2020.
Did we want to say as amended with the amusement arcade stuff in it, or is that not necessary?
Jack?
You're on mute, Jack.
Yeah, I think we should. That's a good point, Christine.
And I can say, as I continue in the introduction, and as amended,
Second.
idea arcades.
I'll second.
Good, thanks.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, we're good. Thank you, Topology, for all your
Congrats,
help
thank
getting
you.
us here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, on to resolutions. Let's see. Amending the content. Would someone like to move 2158 or any that you want? Well, we'll do 165 separately. So can we do 2158 to 2164 unless someone wants
Yeah,
to
can we pull out 64? I had a couple language questions.
on the complete street?
Yes, please.
Okay, so we'll do 2158 to 2162. Someone like to move that?
153. Sorry.
What?
Bill 163.
163. You had said 162. I was just saying 163.
Sorry,
That's
63.
fine.
And sorry, do we want to just try to address Chad's question instead of, or Chad, do you really want it pulled out?
I have a couple of language questions where I thought the language was a little strong, that I wanted to bring up and discuss amending it. So I think it's probably worth pulling it out and removing it.
Okay, so can we just do those through 163 and then we'll have a discussion on 164.
I'll move 2158 to 2163.
Second, anybody?
I'll second it.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Amara,
Yes.
Mr. Roday,
Yes.
Mr. McQueen,
Yes.
Ms. McCready,
Yes.
Mr. Hammond,
Yes.
Mr. Donahue.
Yes.
Okay, Chad, you want to,
Yeah, so I know the last meeting when this was first brought up, we were discussing how the language in many areas wasn't, I'll use the quote in quotation marks, strong. However, when I read the final resolution, there were a couple issues in number 5 as well as in number 7. So I recommend changing 5 to say encourage always the implementation of these complete street initiatives, and get rid of the require when possible. And then also I had a question about within 2 years of the effective date of the policy, the whole inventory of procedures, policy plans, documents, training programs, etc. That surprised me a little bit that we were having a review period as well as some implementation criteria for this. I thought this was more symbolic than something that we were going to action within the borough.
Maybe Becky or who's here? Anybody from Complete? You guys are here, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my recommendation would be to strike 7. So reword 5 and strike 7.
Where do you see numbers?
So I'm looking at the actual resolution. I'm looking on RPF PDF page 41.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So get rid of and require.
Where is that?
Number 5, encourage the
implementation. Oh, it says encourage.
Yeah, and then it says and require, which I thought this was a guidance that we were going to try to follow. This was not going to be a for example, we're having to amend law because of arcades because of a decision that was made. I think this could fall into the same category. And then also in number 7, that within the 2 years of effective date of this policy, in consultation with the borough planner and borough engineer, shall inventory procedures, policies, plans, documents, training programs, performance measures, and other guidance documents needed to be updated and consistent with this policy. I think we lack those things in a lot of other places, and I'm not sure this is where we wanted to start to enact that kind of law.
Are we enacting a law, or this is just a recommendation?
Well, that was sort of exactly my point, Tom. Right? If it's a recommendation, we don't have a 2-year policy review and other things that I think we'd have to put on top of this.
Yeah, my only concern would be is if we don't have some sort of review date in mind in some way to, measure ourselves in terms of, are we achieving desirable goals? A lot of times if you don't have some time bound on something, it tends to just not happen. So is there a way to have some sort of review which not as prescriptive maybe, that just says that?
Yeah.
Can I ask Becky if what is officially required to be included in Complete Streets?
I think I would have to check back with the state to see if there are specific requirements. There are no specific requirements per se for the resolution. One of the benefits, which I'm sure you've discussed, is that of passing Complete Streets, is that there are some grant perks, when you apply for some state grants. I know that they are reviewing language, so I think they would appreciate seeing the review language in. And I think to the councilman who just spoke his point that, perhaps you could consider amending that in 2 years, or say that, we intend to review within 2 years, but I think it is important to have some kind of a timeline in for review.
Yeah.
What's the objection to saying we're going to review our policies in a 2-year time frame, Chad? We really ought to be reviewing policies routinely to see whether they're outdated or times have changed.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, Jeff. I'm not in objection of reviewing the policies. So earlier on, it talks about incorporation of these philosophies into general planning with the planning board and the borough planner and the borough engineer. I think that's quite appropriate. It's more the inventory, procedures, policies, plans, documents, training programs, performance measures. Name one other thing. I couldn't think of one in our borough that we're currently inventorying procedures, policies, plans, documents, and training programs. So we're passing a resolution here that I'm not sure that we can meet the standard.
That ought to be done, and this will be the first. Maybe to your point, I think that's not a bad thing to do. And it doesn't say we have to actually enact any change. It just says we have to make an inventory, and then we have some time period after that in which to affect any changes.
Well, and the other point is, this is what our professionals are doing. We are not, as council people, actually doing the inventory. We're asking our professionals.
Can we change inventory to review?
Sure.
Sounds less formal.
Yeah.
Actually, but a review is even more work. An inventory just says, we have these policies and these are the dates. A review is actually much more onerous.
Right.
I would leave the language the way it is.
Yeah. I mean, let me ask this, let Jeff, in clinical trial design and research, you don't ask questions of a database that you're not willing to answer. So is your intent, would you want us as a borough at a 2-year period to do this? Do you think that would be an important piece? And I questioned whether we would do it, and so if the answer for me is no, then we shouldn't put it in here. But I guess I'm asking the broader question: is this something that we want to do?
It's going to afford us some benefits, so I would say yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I agree.
I don't think it's too onerous. I mean, to Councilman Hammond's point, an inventory is, we could say we don't have these things, right? That could be the inventory. And I think that the goal is a good goal. Whether or not this gets the most attention, I think, to Councilman McQueen's point, is a valid one. We want to get the low hanging fruit and or address the most important topics first. So we may find when we do our inventory in 2 years that we haven't made as much progress as ideally we would, but it doesn't, inventory itself isn't really that onerous maybe.
Yeah, and look, and I'm not wedded to this. My only point here is, of all the things that we should, in my opinion, start doing that we're not, this requirement would be towards the bottom of that list. But if you guys want to keep it, it's not worth fighting over.
It fits in with our downtown revitalization. So I think as part of that whole project, this is a key piece of it.
Okay.
So
I think it's rational. The paragraph 5, what change did we want to make there? Not just take out the word require when possible.
Yeah.
So encourage always the implementation of these complete streets.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm fine with that if other people are.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. And I mean, I think maybe to go back and to Becky's point, maybe we can say the intention for number 7 is to review.
Yeah.
And
Well, if you say something is intended, then you're giving yourself an out not to do it. And I think this is actually going to be a good pilot for the borough to start doing these kind of things.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. If I could just speak just for a moment. Hello, Mayor Canos. This is Linda Rapacki from Redevelopment. Hi, how you doing?
Good.
So I worked very closely with Jeffrey and Christine to start this whole process. We started it way back probably last year at the Complete Streets Summit. I'm part of the statewide Complete Streets Coalition. I've been doing this for probably 8 or 9 years. I meet with a statewide group every single month, and I'm here to tell you that I worked really hard for nearly 3 years to come up with the Complete and Green Streets for All, the new documentation. And be careful about pulling out words like require, because we worked really hard to make sure that when you adopt the resolution based on the new Complete and Green Streets for All model, which is now endorsed 100% by the NJDOT, this is the model for municipalities. But when we put that language in there, it's so that you have every opportunity going forward for grants, for sustainable Jersey points, for the action items for sustainable Jersey. So, Councilman McQueen, I understand your concerns when you see words like require. The first thing people are like, oh, well, wait a second. What if we can't do it? Well, then you can't do it. But the language is there for a very good reason. And I would caution you from making it too weak.
Hey, to follow up on that, I'm just reading the guide to Complete Streets Policy Development, and it says that following the purpose statement, the intent of the policy must be stated clearly and directly using strong action words such as be it resolved, must, or shall.
And I think also that whole, because you're saying require when possible,
Right.
of outside contractors. So I think that's a good thing, because when we have a developer that wants to come into town, we want them to make public spaces and do something that's attractive and works with the community.
Right. We wrote this language so that
We're asking contractors to do it.
right.
And I
We wrote this language so that bottom line, people cannot weasel out of it.
And I think the word when possible also gives us some latitude to work, be pragmatic about it too, don't give up, great because you can't have good, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, guys, I didn't want to have this long a discussion about it. It's not anything that bothers me, and I would vote yes with it in. So it was purely based on the conversation we had last week. So I'm willing to not talk about it anymore.
Okay, so then I would say also based on what Mr. Rapacki said and what Jack Pigeon said, if it makes us more competitive for grants, I think we leave it in.
Yes.
Would somebody move it?
I'll move it.
I'll second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Donahue,
Yes.
Mr. Hammond,
Yes.
Ms. McCready,
yes.
Mr. McQueen,
Yes.
Mr. O'Day,
Yes.
Ms. Zamara.
Yes.
All right, great, thank you. And thank you, Linda and Becky, for being here and helping us understand how this all works. and I will be on the call at 8 o'clock, and we'll announce that we passed this.
Yeah, I'm so excited
Wonderful.
about that, Mayor Canos. That's going to be wonderful. Congratulations to all of you. I really mean it. It's a landmark moment for Bernardsville, and it's only, you can only do wonderful and great things with this going forward. So really, my sincere appreciation for all of your hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay, now we are up to the budget. So what we need to do tonight is introduce it. We missed the 22nd because of the dates, right? So we wouldn't actually have the public hearing till July 13th. Is that the deal? It's the number of days that we need for public notice and all that. I guess Leslie had sent out a draft budget. I'll let Tom, as the finance chair, talk about what that looks like.
Okay. So the budget that we included with today's agenda has a decrease in the amount of expenses, a small increase in the amount to be raised by taxes. We looked line by line at all the different categories for areas that were at risk due to COVID-19, as well as areas that we could make savings, so revenue risks as well as expense savings. We felt that we were very aggressive in terms of what we chose to do for the most part. And I do have one area that I wanted to talk about in more detail today. So if there's anything else that the other finance committee members want to discuss at this point, I'll take a pause, but then I have a proposal that I'd like the rest of the council to listen to.
Well, I think one of the things I just would like to let everybody know is what we did when we had all these issues now with COVID is went back to all the department heads. We did ask them all for any costs that they knew or revenues they knew they weren't going to make, whether it was different fees for buildings or whatever, and also any expenses that they could either do without or wouldn't expend because of programs canceling, things not happening, or and really they did it. I think each department really did a pretty aggressive search of all their expenses and really came up with some tough cuts that they had to make, and that we then incorporated in. So I don't know, Leslie, do you remember how much we actually totally cut out? I know I don't. If you don't know off, don't do that. But it was a lot. We had to do a lot of, there was a lot of lost revenue just in our interest alone on our investment accounts was a 60-some thousand. So we had a lot to make up for. And I just want to thank the finance committee and Leslie and Ralph, because we had so many versions and things changing, and they're still changing. It was a lot of time. I don't know how many finance committee meetings we had, and we still have a lot of unknowns. So, and I think that's what Tom wants to address. John, did you want to add anything?
Only to echo what you said. We took a hard look at everything. We really tried to take the most conservative approach, and because we're obviously at unprecedented times. We've seen a revenue collapse, and we've had departments cut funds. We borrowed from funds to save the taxpayers. So it was it was never an enjoyable meeting, but we're just trying to be the best stewards as we could of their money.
Okay. So what I wanted to discuss is that our last finance committee meeting occurred, and subsequent to our last finance committee meeting, additional direction came out from the state of New Jersey, including direction that came out today. So it really is a dynamic situation. As a result, I was thinking about the implications of the budget as it's currently presented. One of those implications is that we had to make assumptions around revenue loss and around expenses, and some of those were related to the camps and pools. If budget goes forward the way it is presented, we do not have money to open the borough recreation camp currently in the budget. and we do not have any money to open the pool currently in the budget, nor do we have the related expenses. So we don't have the revenue or the expenses of those items. So I sent a proposal around. I believe all the other council members have a copy of this.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So I'm just gonna read what the proposal is, and then we can discuss it. It has a lot of backup detail, which is why I wanted to send the information in advance. But I imagine there's going to be some questions. So the current proposal, if we call Proposal A, what's in the budget right now, does not allow for conducting the summer rec program, summer camp, which is the borough run summer camp. I think before I get started, there's 4 categories, and this is important to think about. There's 4 categories that are the pool and the camp. There's the pool itself, that's category 1. There's the borough recreation camp, which the borough staffs and runs. There's the third-party camps, and then there's fall and winter programs, which are also run by the borough, but they're not specifically summer programs. The current assumption, we don't allow any funds for conducting the summer program, recreational summer program camp, or allow for opening of the pool. We've removed the expenses and the revenue from those things. If we go with Proposal B, is a sample example. It's not the only way it could be done. And in fact, we'd have to coordinate with the rec committee to understand exactly the weeks that the camp might be open if we did a partial opening, or weeks that the pool would be open if we did a partial opening for the pool. However, the scenario should be representative of what it would do, what would happen if we did a partial opening. Proposal B, the proposal that I'm putting forward, has no negative impact on taxes to be raised as compared to Proposal A, which is what's under consideration tonight. Proposal B would have very limited risk or no risk to the borough financially, and I'll explain why that is the case. The main idea is, and I'm going to use the borough recreation camp as the example, but the approach could be replicated for the pool and to a lesser extent, the other 2 categories I spoke of, which were the fall and winter programs and the third-party camps. So the borough recreation camp, we would budget expenses, and they would be set proportional to the number of weeks that the camp could potentially be open. So the example that's in the spreadsheet that was sent to everybody was we would be open for 10 out of 12 weeks, or 83% of the summer as compared to a standard summer. The revenue target for the camp would be set at that same amount plus $5,000, and that $5,000 would be set aside for incremental expenses related to additional incremental cleaning that we might have to do, or personal protective equipment or something of that sort. The quantity of participants, then we would determine based on that revenue assumption, how many participants we need, and that would come out with a number that would be a break-even number of participants. So for the sake of argument, let's say we need 85 participants to break even. So we would ask the rec department then to put together a plan, and we would ask them for a date, a go, no-go decision would be required. So let's say the plan was to open the camp on July 1st. They would say, we need a go, no decision by June 21st to do that. So we would sign up as many people as possible before the June 21st deadline for that go, no decision. And we would assess whether or not we had enough interest in the public to attend the camp. So the recreation camp would be publicized. We tell people ahead of time what the go, no criteria is, such as at least 85 people need to sign up. That's just an example. The campers would be required to pay in full before the go, no-go date. And if for whatever reason we didn't get enough people, if insufficient number of people signed up, we would issue a full refund to anybody who did provide us with the monies, to go to the camp. The caveat is that if the camp doesn't open for whatever reason, we would need to go back and cancel that appropriation in the budget. And as long as we did that, which is just an internal process for our finance team, the expenses would be canceled, the revenue wouldn't occur, and we effectively would be reverting back to what's currently in the budget today. I see this as an opportunity for us to basically allow our rec department to put together a plan, gauge public interest, and then make a go, no to go decision in a way that's not financially harmful to the borough. So there's a lot of details that are attached in the Excel sheet that I provided. But I think conceptually, and we struggle with this a lot in the finance committee, what should the recommendation do? What should we do? Should we open the pool? Should we not open the pool? We didn't have direction from the state at the time. It's understandable why things were put together the way they are, but I'm asking tonight if there's a way for us, as we've been asking, to get out of the way. These are employees that we would be employing for the summer, so it gives somebody work and pay in this situation. It gives a place for families to have their kids and have an activity after an extended period of being at home. I'm thinking that there's both a value to our residents as well as a potential income source for people. I think that this is the right thing to do. We're trying to promote our businesses and give them a way to get jump started and restarted. And I think this kind of goes along with the same kind of philosophy. Happy to talk through the numbers if anybody wants to look at the Excel spreadsheet or has questions about this example.
Just a question, Tom, on the pool. If we, at some point we have to start, if it's going to take 4 weeks to open the pool, there's money we have to spend to get it open. And if we spend that money and then find out we don't have enough enrollment to make it work, then we'd actually have a loss on that end.
That is true. So let me talk specifically about the pool, because the example I gave was more for the recreation camp. But let's talk about the pool. The pool has, I am told, about $10,000, which needs to be spent as like a startup cost. It would be a sunk cost. Whether the pool opened or not, you sort of incur that $10,000. My understanding is that in a standard year, they would like to have 4 to 6 weeks to do that $10,000 worth of work. That would be in a standard year. I would look to the recreation committee and our rec department to say, is there any way we can compress that time frame? And just for argument's sake, let's say we can compress that time frame to 3 weeks, which would be 1 week below the lower end of their standard estimate. If we made the decision that we were going to go ahead with the idea, we would have the opening date minus 3 weeks to see how much, gauge how much public interest we had. As an example, let's say July 15th was the open date. You go back, 3 weeks from that date, that would be somewhere around the end of June. And it would give us about 2 weeks, 3 weeks to sort of gauge public interest and see how many people would want to sign up. The other thing is that, we as a borough could say that we're going to accept $10,000 worth of risk and make the decision closer to the actual planned opening date. Gina and I had a brief 20-minute conversation with the rec committee. Maybe Gina could reflect what the rec committee's thinking.
Yeah, I mean, from their perspective, they've obviously been working really hard on all of alternative plans. And so, to be honest with you, I didn't realize that the finance committee, the proposal in the budget was going to preclude them from, being able to figure out whether or not, the rec camps and pools could open. So once I understood that, then, of course, we want to make sure that, we're not losing money necessarily on opening, but, again, giving residents some time to get out of their house after being locked up for a couple months, allowing camps to open for parents to work, things like that. I think if we have the opportunity to do it and the council, and the committees can make it happen from a numbers perspective, their recommendation is that they should, move forward, and they believe that they can be at least net neutral from a numbers perspective, if not make a little bit of money.
So there's a form and there's a substance problem here. So Tom, help, and John, help me. So my understanding is the rules for budgets require us, frankly, tonight to move a budget forward, right? How can we, and now mind you, sometimes things shouldn't get in the way, but how could we fundamentally even do this when, because I saw the numbers that you sent, I actually just after dinner, I looked at them in detail. I looked at also what the rec team had sent over. The numbers aren't the same. So if we have to be precise in a municipal budget, how do we meet that standard?
Well, in terms of when the budget's due, I mean, the budget is past due, as is the budget for the county, as is the budget for the state of New Jersey. And this is, basically a reflection of the year that we're in and the variability that the COVID-19 pandemic has caused for everybody. I think we are well advised to move the budget forward as soon as we can. But I also think that we'd be well advised to have flexibility built in rather than preclude options. And I agree that, we want as much accuracy as possible, but when you're making assumptions, you're making that, and no two assumptions would be exactly the same. I do agree. And I did have a chance to speak with the rec committee just a couple hours ago that we need to get our numbers to tie up, even more succinctly. But I would say that my numbers were more conservative than the numbers that the rec committee provided.
Well, so Tom, but how practically, and look, I'm sorry, this is going to be a bit of an ignorant question because I'm learning the craziness in regards to municipal budgets. Let's just say that the prediction is the expense line is going to be $10, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the reality ends up being that the expense line is $16, but that's offset by $16 in revenue. How do we physically account for it? Because what I understood in the budgeting process that we had to be precise in the expense side.
I'll let Ralph and Leslie address that question.
Well, as far as the expenses go, it isn't. First of all, let's go back to the revenues. The pool and the recreation their revenues are gauged basically from the previous year. Okay, we cannot budget anything more than what was earned in the previous year. So with that being said, the expenses then fall into that same category, okay, after that's done. Now, we had done this originally many months ago when before the COVID crisis occurred. And then when we were meeting these last 3 or 4 weeks, or more than that actually, we began, and we're not getting any information from the state. The talk between the 5 of us at this meeting was that we should not put in numbers for any of these situations at this point in time because we had no idea when guidance was going to be given, and we needed to get get this budget put together and move forward. So, and then today, and Tom has been discussing this with Leslie and I, and I've been, and information's being passed back and forth to the other members of the committee about the possibility of putting in some numbers at this point in time that would allow us some flexibility. And it can be done, but well, Tom has come up at this point in time, has come up with a situation and a timeline that would allow the borough to pull out before any losses are made, as far as revenues not meeting the standards before we pull the trigger. Then the programs are dropped, the rec programs are dropped, and then the expenses can be canceled, and we would net out zero along the lines, the 4 lines for each of them. There's revenue and for both the pool and the rec, and then there's expenses for both. There are it's unique to the salary and wage line item. The revenue line item are supposed to sustain both salary and wage, and for whatever programs are run on the expense side, and same thing with the pool. And if they fall short, then we eat that. And next year, with the same appropriations, they've got to be reduced based on what was taken in the previous year. And they can also be expanded if, in fact, there were extra revenues made.
I mean, Gina,
So,
I'm
Sorry,
sorry.
Ralph. I'm sorry, Ralph. I
One
thought you were
other
done.
question. Yeah, sorry, Ralph. One
Sure.
other question. So
Sure.
we can't add, once the budget's introduced and then approved, we can't add in the future the ability to open the pool or open the rec camps if they are found to be, if we have enough residents who are interested and paying the fee. We can't add it,
Right.
correct?
Part of the problem there is a way to amend the budget at adoption. Okay, one either 3% higher than the particular line item in question or lower than the particular line item in question, but only 3%. You can do that, and then the budget can be adopted that evening as amended. Okay, but if the line item exceeds that 3% number, either exceeds it or a decrease of that 3% number, then the budget has to be, cannot be adopted at that hearing. It has to be republished and another hearing to be scheduled, another 28 in between days between introduction and adoption. So we would be somewhere in August when we would be adopting the budget. And the problem with this scenario is that we are at, you're at zero or you're at a particular number. Say you put in $100,000 or $50,000 for revenue for the pool. And if in fact at budget time, we've only made $40,000 or $30,000, we could not, that would be more than 3% difference. And we would not be able to change what was at the document at that time without doing the whole process all over again, another 6 weeks out from the 13th of July. It's a 3% that's a problem here.
Let me ask you, Ralph, a similar related question to what Councilwoman McCready just asked. If we go with proposal A, which is on the agenda for tonight, and we decided to open the camp or the pool anytime this summer, would we have the funds to cover the expenses?
You mean, do we have them already?
Budgeted. Would we have the funds, any budgeted funds to cover the expenses?
The expenses for the
pool or the camp
The camps, no, we took those out.
Right.
Leslie, I think there were 6 different categories, if I remember, Leslie, that were affected by that.
Right. So go ahead, Leslie.
But let me just ask you, Ralph, but if we don't have it in the budget, we don't have expenses or revenue, but we decide, okay, we're going to open the pool. Okay. Yes, there's enough people. Now you put the revenues in, and would they cover the expense as people register? So now they're paying you money to come. We didn't budget it, but now all of a sudden you've got $50,000 in revenue that we didn't budget for, but you've also got $50,000 in expenses.
I'm sorry, Mayor. What time frame would you be saying that would be done from the introduction tonight until the adoption? If that we were collecting this money.
Yeah, if we started tomorrow saying, okay, listen, if we're going to open the pool, you have to register right now. You've got till, Friday or next Friday to get your money in. And if we don't get enough people, we're not opening. But now you've got the revenue that you can then expend.
But the clarification, Ralph, is neither the revenue nor the expense are in the version of the budget that passed on June 8th.
That's logic,
right. So now what then, Ralph?
Is how do you set?
We'd have to put a number in there, some number in there tonight.
Well, that's the problem. Some number. We have no visibility on costs. We have no visibility on revenue. We have no idea what this is really going to cost. I mean, given the situation we're in, I just don't think it's a prudent thing to be essentially speculating on what the outcome can be. I mean, it's frustrating. We all want the amenity, but I don't think it makes financial sense, personally.
Can I ask a question about?
Can I just ask? I'm sorry, Jeff. I just want to respond to Councilman Donahue. The difference is if we put it in, and we're wrong, but we're in the ballpark of correct, or if we put it in and we put it in with the caveat known to people that we're not going to incur the expense unless the revenue's coming, then we actually don't harm the budget. So
We don't know what the expenses are either, because we don't know what the cleaning protocols will be, occupancy will be. I mean, some pools in other places, you have to actually book a time to go. And a lot of this can people, well, if I can't show up on a nice day and my kids are going crazy, you know, why would I do it? You know, I just think there's so many variables. We can't even hang our hat on one thing, whether it be revenue certainty or expense certainty.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you, John, but at the same time, I mean, again, I mean, from a resident's point of view, I mean, I think that they would welcome to be able to have this option. And if we as a council approve this budget and we're precluding that possibility, I mean, I think, our residents, I don't think that they'd be happy. I don't know.
I agree with Gina. I think I can hang my hat on the fact that the pool serves as a community gathering space. We have a lot of people suffering at home that need a place to go, need a place to get fresh air. They haven't seen their friends in months. There's senior citizens that take advantage of our pool. And we would just be not putting first the people who really need it most at this time, just because of the fact that we might lose money. And, a lot
well,
of
that comes back to the taxpayers, though, and that's where I have a trouble.
It's also a community benefit, and it's a very big service to the community that a lot of people depend on.
I don't think you can put a dollar figure on the morale aspect. So
well, our job is to be stewards of the taxpayers' money, and that's where I'm coming from in this conversation.
I'm not, so I would vote no to this budget.
Let me finish. I think there's the intrinsic value, as has already been stated, of opening the pool. But I had a specific question about the upfront money that it takes to get the pool ready. So I don't think there's an issue with this with camps, by the way, because the camps have that built-in fail-safe that if people don't register for it, we just don't do it. It's no different than when you're at college and you register for a course and they say there's a minimum number of people required. If that minimum's not met, the course is not given. So there's really not going to be an opportunity for loss with camp. With the pool, the opportunity for loss is whatever the preparation of the pool is, the cost is. And I heard $10,000 was mentioned. So my question is this: isn't there a cost to maintaining a pool even if you don't open it? In other words, you have to open it up in the summer and just do some routine maintenance and clean it out and take care of the algae or whatever else you have to do. So how much is that? And would that offset in other words, would it reduce remarkably that preparation cost because you're going to do it anyhow?
Based on what people have told me, there are tons of people ready to join the pool and do the camps. I don't know who everyone else is speaking to, but everyone wants the pool open. And in addition, you have swim teams and tons of groups that would probably help in the fundraising efforts if they could get their pool opened. Like
I'm on your side, Christina, but what I'd like to know is what's the
We're presuming the world's not going to look like last year. We're presuming they can even do this effectively with all the social distancing stuff that'll probably be required. Will bathrooms and showers even be allowed to be open?
Outdoors, so.
Still, you have to maintain distances, officially, depending on what you're doing.
There will probably be capacity required.
Yes.
Well,
the issue here, so look, everybody is, as far as I'm concerned, everyone that I've heard is right in part, right? Yes, there's the public will want to use the pool, but there's a lot. So unfortunate realities is a lot of technical things that get in the way and make this a challenge. I'm looking at, so if we have to be precise on our expense side to appropriate the dollars to be spent, there's a relatively large gap between what Tom's estimate was and what the rec estimate was. Now I know that these details, in a normal world, they would be less variant, but I think there's so many things that I'm trying to find a way to get to get this pool open, but there are a lot of obstacles to get there.
Let me see if I can help. Yeah. First of all, I reject the premise that this is going to, quote unquote, guarantee cost us money.
Yeah, no, I didn't say that.
No, I'm sorry. That wasn't your statement. That was from Councilman Donahue. So the concept that's going to cost us money.
It's going to cost money, Tom. It's going to cost more than last year. We don't know what that will be, nor do we know what the protocols will be that make it even attractive to even have any confidence in the revenue. That's just, it's okay. I usually like to operate off knowing something. One thing of the two is certain. None of this is certain. All we know is certain is we have like a $400,000 gap in revenue that we're trying to make up. I just don't want to add to that.
Okay. So I'd like you to speak to the $400,000, please.
$600,000 gap. And if you look at the budget, it's X the pool. It is 350 off the top of my head.
350.
From
I'm
fines
sorry.
and fees and whatnot. Well, it's $600,000.
I don't recognize any of the numbers that you just
Well,
mentioned.
go to line 327. You'll see it there. It's at $600,000. You X out the 150 for the pool, and there's a couple other things. So call it 250, what we took out. You know, we're missing, permit fees, court fines, things like this. We're budgeting, a low number because we're in this unprecedented times. And I just don't want to do something that's going to cost more money that'll have to come out of taxes. That's just where I'm coming from. I mean, two people can reasonably disagree, but that's sort of my take on it.
Okay.
I like the amenity too, but I don't know that we have any certainty around anything. We don't know what the protocol is going to look like. Tomorrow it could be a nightmare. It could be great. But,
Excuse me, guys, can you hear me?
Yes. Sorry. Go ahead, Edward. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hi. It's Ted Dolan. Sorry, I had to drive somewhere for a family issue, and I'm in the middle of the mountains down in Hunterdon County here. So I'm trying to help here in terms of a couple things. In terms of Chad, just before it cut out, I heard you saying trying to find a way to get to yes, and thinking about the Tom's numbers versus the numbers that I worked up with Neil. There is a cover there in that if municipal budgeting says you can't budget revenue higher than the prior year, and the expenses match it, then if you approved the numbers apart from the June 8th, June 7th, or the prior budget last week that you guys looked at, if you put the 2019 numbers and we came in lower on both of those, or zero, if it never gets opened, then I think you're covered in the budget. Again, I'm isolating this instance, right? So but then when you look at some of the other questions that came up in terms of Councilman Donahue, you talked about the capacity constraints. We've been working from the NJRPA issue of how to deal with COVID with municipal pools for the last month and a half. And we've been looking at the social distancing rule is on the grounds of the pool, or 6 square foot, so 6 feet in each direction, from a group of same relatives or individuals. So if me and my son were there, we could sit together. But if I'm talking to you, you'd have to be 6 feet away from me. All right. In terms of the bathrooms, you could lock off the showers and ask everybody to change at home. Come to the pool already prepared.
Does that contemplate like guests wouldn't be allowed? Like you couldn't bring like your son's friend, or what's the guidance on that?
I'll have to go back and revisit that, but we were paying mostly attention to how do we operate, how do our members operate while they're at the pool, and how do what's going to have to change for our employees, and how are they going to have to operate on a daily basis? Like how many times a day would they have to clean and that kind of thing. So I will have to go back and look at the guest, if there's any guidance on guests, and that may come out tomorrow with the governor's issuance.
Ted, do we have any idea of the 2019 members, what percentage would consider coming back in this type of an environment?
No, I don't have that specific answer. What I do have is in the last 15 to 20 years, we come in within 3 to 5%, of the prior year numbers, membership numbers, with 2 exceptions. We had a big drop off when Basking Ridge about 10 years ago, or 10 or 12 years ago, closed their got rid of their waiting list and took all comers. And that was because they were doing a renovation and needed the cash. All right. So there was a big drop in our non-member memberships, or non-resident memberships. The other incident was during Sandy 5 or 6 years ago, where we had about an 8% or 6 to 8% increase. So outside that 3 to 5% change, all right, we had an increase due to the fact that people had nowhere to go. They couldn't go to their shore homes. They didn't book vacations. They stayed in Bernardsville.
Yeah, I mean, my concern, and I think this is in part John's. And it sounds like there may be a way to prevent this. And John, I don't want to speak for you, so I'll speak for myself. So, obviously there's a fixed cost to opening the pool, which is not insignificant. Like John was saying, there was a lot of work to cut all these budgets to make sure that taxes didn't go up by an outrageous amount this year. What I'm concerned about is, because I know that I don't believe the requirements for staffing change because of this square foot. And now I'm not entirely versed in the pool, but there's so many lifeguards we have to have on duty based on the amount of pool that's open. Is having a pool that no one goes to. So is there a way to sort of back out of it if it appears that, look, the residents are saying that we don't want to go to the pool this summer?
Hey, Chad, on that point, there's a question for Ralph and Jack. Like, because guidance is coming out tomorrow. And I'm probably guilty of the same thing that we all are, is kind of speculating what could happen. Is there a way we could, and everyone hates emergency meetings, but if we could do the budget, like say Thursday, if we had the benefit of what we can do and can't do, maybe that would bring some clarity to this picture versus us kind of arguing about what could be said. And, we could all be, we'll probably all be partially wrong tomorrow at some stage, but at least we'll have facts. Is that possible to do that, and not screw up the whole budget process?
Like that.
Yes.
Yeah. And Jeff the last meeting asked us to keep all Mondays free too. So, there is time.
Yeah. So, I think this, if we're going to do
Monday would be too late.
Yeah, we do it like say Thursday. I'm thinking like if we
could do that.
Guidance tomorrow and we noticed it for 48 hours, Jack, if I'm getting
Yes,
wrong. And
that's
then we
correct.
can just talk about the budget. At least then we'll know what the guidelines are, and Rec and Finance would have a chance to sort of at least, put their heads together and see what the picture could look like.
Why is Monday too late, Ralph? If we go into August, we go into August. But what? We could still operate under an emergency budget.
Yeah, we could.
I guess I want to argue that, the old phrase, you can either have it fast or you can have it right. I want to make sure that we all get this right.
No, I agree with you. And part of the, look, Jeff, there's so lack of clarity with what the governor's done in a lot of the things, one of which is when we actually have to have this budget done. So, I would love to see, look, Ted, is it possible to send out an email tomorrow?
Wait, before we start that, I deferred my time to Ted Dolan so he could talk, and the conversation went back and forth quite a bit. I just have a few things I'd like to add. So my concern with the budget as it's presented tonight, that if we pass and move it forward, we are then stuck with the 3% change rule that Ralph Maresco highlighted for all of us. If we pass the budget as it is today without some sort of change as it relates to the pools and camps, we are effectively telling the public that we are tying our own hands and making it virtually impossible. I'm not done. I'm not done, Councilman. I'm not done, Councilman. I let you speak. Councilman Donahue, I let you speak. Did I let you speak, Councilman?
Yes, please speak and hurry. Thank you.
I don't have to hurry. I have my time now. If we make the decision tonight to move the budget forward as it is right now, we are effectively tying our hands and saying the pools will not open, the summer camp will not open, and there's a different problem that we have with our third-party summer camp in the budget as well. I think that we should not, as a borough council, tie our own hands. We have bent over backwards in our last meeting, and I fully supported being as flexible as possible as it relates to our businesses in town. Everybody is struggling. Our local businesses are struggling. Our families are struggling being at home. People have been out of work or out of their opportunities for normal recreation. We have a responsibility to be as flexible as we can. These summer camps not only provide a source of employment for people, but they provide a source of recreation. And if we talked about running our borough like a business, no business would just throw up their hands and say, I'm going to walk away from this. They would get creative. All of our businesses in town are being as creative as they can be. How can they go online? How can they do outdoor servicing? How can they do servicing at the curb? I think that we have a responsibility to be as aggressive as we can to try and provide both an opportunity for employment and opportunity for recreation for our residents.
So Tom, that's sort of what we were trying. I think, at least I can speak for myself. we were looking for some flexibility. I think that was the spirit of
And
it.
what I'm proposing is a low risk approach that provides flexibility versus the current approach, which has no flexibility.
Which is why I like the suggestion of a second meeting when we have the guidelines and we have a little more information what our parameters are.
Again, I'm putting forward the idea that this proposal was a genesis of that what we had in the budget tied our hands. And therefore, I don't think that going forward with what's in that budget for what's on the agenda today makes sense.
We're saying let's rethink it after the guidelines. We're not saying go forward with what the Finance Committee brought forward.
And I think to Councilman Hammond's point as well, the pool is the one thing that has a slightly more unique circumstance than the other categories that are being discussed. The pool has a little bit longer lead time and has some startup costs that the other things don't have. So if we talk about the pool, we have to talk about it in a slightly different venue. But the Borough Rec Camp is a little bit more straightforward because it doesn't have the high setup costs.
So Tom, I think a really simple solution for this, if we're going to redress the budget on Thursday, which I mean, that doesn't seem like a highly, if we can still meet our timelines, that seemed reasonable to me. Relatively quickly, I think we can poll the pool and folks that have used the various camps to see what participation would be like. Now, it's not binding, but if you have 100 people that want to be a member of the pool, it's different than if 400 people want, right? So I think that helps to instruct a good choice.
Yeah, I think we have to be careful using non-scientific ways to collect data, and then you're making a financial decision based on a non-scientific, method of gathering data.
Look, you're not going to get to a scientific method, but if you have all of your 19 members and you send an email to all of them and say, do you want to join the pool? Yes, no, or maybe, you get something that's at least helpful.
I think people will use the data to reinforce the position they already have.
What if you send out an email to all the people, if you want to join, send in a $50 deposit now. And that way you'll get a much better sense of who's coming.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. Can I ask Ted, as chair of the rec committee, did you all explore this as an opportunity for different types of membership? Or did we at least ask people, say they're not willing to sign up for a prorated full membership, but they may have been willing to sign up for a week or something like that. Have we explored that?
We did not explore a week or a short period because we still have those expenses to cover. So no, not specifically. What we did was looked at how to preserve the quick sign up discount that we normally would have in April. We'd preserve that if we were, let's say we had a go this week, we'd have the next 2 weeks to incent quick signups. We'd keep that discount in place. So that's what we were working off of that, and working off of assuming that we could get as much as the same membership levels as last year, and looked at what decline could we suffer before we start to have a break even or a red situation.
That's why I think the benefit of waiting till Thursday, push the budget till Thursday, as long as it doesn't screw up where we're at in the process. You'll have at least tomorrow in your rec meeting have the guidelines in front of you to talk over.
Well, and Tom, at its outset, I mean, you don't have the numbers to put into a new budget this evening anyway, do you? So there has to be a whole jigger that happens.
What I believe is that putting in a budget that has zero in expenses and zero in revenue is the only one that precludes us from doing anything. If we go in with a budget that has expenses and revenue at the same level, there's no impact on the taxpayers. And as long as we have time to make a decision about the opening of the camps or the opening of the pool before we incur any significant expense, we don't have to incur the expense. And that's the difference. And I think what I'm saying is, if we budget the expense and the revenue at an equal number, even if we overestimate both revenue and expenses, and then we take 1 week or 2 weeks, whatever, to assess how many people are coming, what's the revenue going to be, where are the expenses going to be, we still have the option to press no. And that's what I'm saying. The only thing that restricts us is doing it the way we're doing it now. And that's why I have a different proposal.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I hear everything Tom's saying. I mean, and yeah, I mean, entering in last year's revenue and last year's expenses, I think we'd be covered. I mean, I think having another meeting and waiting until Thursday, I mean, I don't know what the point would be.
Because we have guidelines, at least we know what the pool would look like, you know, coming from the state. I think that's beneficial. And I think with very little downside, because we may end up there anyway, what you guys are talking about, but just at least we'll know.
Yeah, but is it going to say we're not going to open the pool? I mean,
no, it's like we could, what you're proposing could happen, but at least I think we'll have a better, we're speculating now, we'll know, at least we're back here tomorrow night, you guys have a better understanding of what it may look like. Is it something that's a lot more open than you thought, or is it a lot more onerous than you thought? You know, so
but I mean, the bottom line is then we just cancel the line items. Right now we're handcuffing ourselves rather than just letting it ride and then canceling the lines after.
I think the Councilwoman McCready is saying the same thing I'm saying.
Yeah.
I agree with that too.
Jeff, did you want to say something? I saw Jeff start to talk. No,
it was the same thing I was going to say, but to answer Gina's point, if we found out on Thursday that the governor's guidelines were really, as John says, onerous, you know, say he said, I'll be extreme here, you can only have 10 people at the pool at one time and you can't have any lounge chairs. Well, then we pretty much could say it's not a feasible proposition. Yeah. So I think we really want to know what the art of the possible is. But by the same token, you know, we have the opportunity to put something in there now, and then we could delete it later. I think it would give the Recreation Committee the opportunity to start surveilling the existing membership to see what the interest is.
Well, we could do. I think it'd be easier to do if we had, you know, we did that. It costs us nothing to wait to do this on Thursday morning, you know, because we'll have more clarity then, or Thursday evening, whatever the case is.
Yeah, but except all of our time.
I also think
that's valuable
you
to me. Sorry.
But you know, but I don't know how much time Leslie needs to make this happen, because it's not a clear line to line item, is it? You know, there were several lines involved. It's going to take some time to make that balance. Yes.
Yeah, if we're doing revenue is equal to the appropriation, it won't be too bad. You know, if we're trying to actually come up with a perfect number, that would take a lot more time.
Yeah, there isn't a perfect number out there. That was initially my concern, but I like the whole, you know, look, and there has to be some understanding. So let me just be one of the things that's there has to be some understanding in regards to spending. If essentially it's a blank, if we write a blank check budget.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not proposing that.
No, I know you're not, but you know as well as I do that once a budget's appropriated, it can then be spent. They can then be spent. So we just need to make sure we have some fiscal controls on things.
Yes, we'd have to do that.
So does somebody have a number that they want to put in there? Are we just going to make up a number?
Last year's revenue and
expenses. Yeah, I thought we were going to use the 2019 numbers.
So we put those back in and make it equal?
We could use the 2019 numbers and prorate them, no?
We could just put them in.
Yeah, we put in.
And we just can't go over.
Yeah.
So please excuse my cynicism in this, okay? But I'm concerned. Look, I've seen all the estimates of expense. So I'm going to use round numbers. If we put 100,000 in, but the actual that we're expecting is 40, we need to make sure that the 60 doesn't get spent. And how do we do that? Ralph, is that a you thing?
As far as revenue or expenses?
So that on both, well, look, I never worry about revenues exceeding estimates. I worry about expenses if we expect them to be, if we expect the expenses to be 40,000 because we know that it's going to be some less than what was in 19. We appropriate $100,000. How do we make sure the extra 60 doesn't get spent?
Well, that if it's not necessary, purchase orders can be stopped or not done. I can control that.
So you can control some margin of error, and that's really what I'm looking for. Look, we're not squabbling over $10,000 here. It's how do we make this effectively work So that way the money just doesn't go out the window.
Well, and if you put in both numbers, equal numbers, and your expenses equal that and your revenues don't, you've lost money.
No, I know.
That is correct.
You know, if you've committed to hiring people and paying for cleaning services and whatever, and the revenue doesn't come in to equal that.
I mean, is it possible to say something that, you know, look, we do not want expenses to more than a 10% loss between revenues and expenses? I'm just making up a number. You know, the thing that I'm trying to avoid is us going and spending $60,000 and only have 10 people sign up.
Yeah, I don't see that as one of the scenarios. If we follow the guidelines that I put out, you know, we get a go, no go date from our rec department about when we have to make a decision. We're not committed, you know, we're hiring people on an hourly basis. So if, you know, if we don't open, they don't get paid. I double checked that with Neil. He said that is the case. You know, we'll know how many people we have for the camps. We know what the camp expenses are. Traditionally, the borough rec camp is on a variable cost basis is one of, you know, is a revenue producer for us. The revenue exceeds the expenses. We have some of the numbers under one scenario in the Excel spreadsheet that I sent around. We can in the course of the next 2 days, make sure that whatever, and the numbers I got, to be clear, those aren't my numbers. Those were numbers I got from our finance staff. I was given those numbers and I double checked the numbers with the finance staff. So I didn't make up those numbers except to say that if the camp is only open for 10 out of 12 weeks, I took 10/12ths of the original number, which goes to one of Councilman McQueen's assumptions. You know, is that a good assumption or not?
Well, it's more, I just want to make sure that we have control, because right now we're essentially, and that we have as much precision as we can. That's what I'm asking for.
I understand. But what I'm also saying is that it's not like we're going to commit 60,000 and then go, darn it, nobody came. We're going to have visibility. We're going to have visibility into demand before we press the button on significant expenses. And what we talked about was the pool at $10,000 was the only exception to that. And, you know, maybe there's ways we can mitigate that as well.
All right, I've got an idea. Okay, let me make a proposal. So we're gonna have this registration drive, whatever it is, and can we have a second double check that comes back to council on opening?
I absolutely think we should. We should review everything on the go, no go date, and we should have a report from the rec department that tells us exactly how many people. It's 1 day prior to the go, no go date. How many people are signed up? What's the revenue? Did our expenses, you know, do we expect that our expenses miss the target? We need to know before we say go. And that's the whole purpose of doing it this way. I think that the other way presupposes the decision. This one says, let's gather the data and the information and then make the decision at the latest date we can reasonably make that decision safely.
So let me rephrase, because you said a couple things that I'd like to maybe paraphrase and rephrase. So we move the 19 budget with the revenue expenses to get this going.
The budget.
We then set a date where we're going to make a go no decision, where we then refine, because you said that we can change the line items once they're approved, correct?
No.
So that's why we wait 2 days to see if we maybe get a clearer picture.
We can cancel an appropriation that's in the budget.
So we can't change an expense line from $100,000 down to $60,000 when we have a clearer picture? Not
if we move it forward today, or if we make that decision after we move it forward on, say, Thursday, as Councilman Donahue's proposed. So once we go through that first gateway, as Ralph Maresca pointed out, we only have plus or minus 3%, which is why I was so concerned with pushing it forward with 0 on both lines tonight, because it presupposes the decision.
I'd also like to add something in that Tom touched on earlier, which was relating to thinking outside the box. So for revenues, for example, you know, maybe this year, not all the revenue is from membership. Maybe this year, all the revenue is because everyone's gym memberships got canceled and now they need a place to go swim laps. So we, you know, have like an exercise class that meets 3 times a week and we charge people for that. So there are other ways to regain revenue from not just a membership standpoint, requiring an extra cost if you want to have a trainer train you for a triathlon or something like that. Like, the possibilities are there. And I think the rec committee can really get into the details, as well as, a lot of the members of our swim community and our fitness community who have gyms are not open. There's no guidelines when that's going to happen. So maybe they can utilize our space and we get paid for that.
I completely agree. So part of the reason why we're bringing Bob in is to bring that type of creativity and help with the creativity in that
and
department.
put him to good use.
Yeah,
We
I was
need
just
to
going to
put
say,
him to
we got a
good
new
use.
rec director in 2 weeks.
And what happened this morning is we got some more information.
That's true. We have new information last week and new information today, which is driving some of this discussion. So I want to recognize that it's not that it was necessarily poor planning in the past. It's that we're getting it's a dynamic situation. We get new information every day.
And that's why, I mean, to John's
new
point,
information tomorrow.
And that's, I think we have more critical information tomorrow that I think plays into this in part. I'm
comfortable waiting till Thursday.
I think we need to wait till Thursday.
I'm comfortable doing that. But what I think we should avoid tying ourselves down to is that there's going to be one guarantee. No, there's going to be more clarity. I agree. There'll be more data. There'll be more information. Yeah. But I don't think that there will be a definitive answer which says this is clearly, unequivocally the only way to do it. Agreed. We won't have that level of clarity by Thursday. We'll just have something a little bit better than where we are today.
And I think a little better because, look, if Murphy comes out and says, look, we're allowing 5 people in the pool, I think we need to hear what these guidelines at least look like a little bit. And I think we get the information tomorrow. If it was 3 weeks from now, I probably wouldn't be saying this, but we have it tomorrow.
Well, and I think it's important that the public hear the guidelines as well, because that may affect their decision as to whether they're actually interested or not.
It's an excellent point.
My other concern is with poor Leslie. She's in the office right now, and she's got an hour and a half ride home. And, I'd like to give her time, not tonight, and force her to sit there and whip out a new budget. And by Thursday, she can have time to play with this and get us a new version with that option in it. And so that's I think the Thursday may be the best, as much as I hate more meetings too. Hopefully it will be a quick one, because
there are other things about the budget that needed to be discussed other than just camps and pools.
Yeah, and I'm not done with the camp stuff either, because we've talked mostly about the pool so far. So I agree with the mayor.
I'm not available Thursday, so we need to find a new day.
Friday?
All day, morning, noon, night.
Any other day but Thursday.
Friday?
Yeah, I can do Friday. That's
Jack and Ralph, is Friday soon enough so that we keep the 28 days thing?
Yeah, that's what I would check with Leslie with that, Tom.
So yes, or you're checking?
Yes.
Yes, it is? Okay. So Friday, okay with people?
It's fine by me.
Okay, so the other topic.
But not at 7. If we could do it earlier, that would be good.
What time on Friday, just so that I know for the notice?
5.
5 at night?
Yeah.
Fine with me.
Yeah, it's fine with me.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't get an actual time out of that. I said Friday night, but I
think
what
5.
time?
5
5.
PM,
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, 5.
John, does that work for you? I know sometimes you have work things.
5 o'clock, yeah.
I'm
You're okay
good.
with 5?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so the other items of the Borough Rec Camp, I think, is a slightly easier decision than the pool because there aren't a lot of upfront costs. We have the go, no-go date is probably closer to the opening date. And I think we can ask people, what their interest is. I think the rec department is well suited to be able to do that. And I think we have we don't have a lot of sunk costs in the borough run recreation camp. So that'll be part of the Friday discussion as well. Is that okay with people?
Sure.
Those numbers in again,
I think
want an equal number for both revenue and expense.
That's correct. And we wouldn't budget for any revenue above what the expense are. which would create a situation where if we're wrong, we're wrong on the low side, will more likely be a good news story then, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that was the Borough Rec Camp. That's the Borough Run Rec Camp. So we've talked about the pool and the Borough Run Rec Camp. The fall and winter programs are in there now, but we would need to, based on my calculation, we need to get at least 80% participation in those. So I'm hoping that that's the case, and if we do, then we're okay. But if just so the council knows, if for any reason the borough fall or winter programs fell to 60% or 70% of participation, that would be below what's in the budget. It would be somewhat of a shortfall.
Well, and then how do we deal with this? This is why this is so frustrating, right? So a lot of the fall and winter programs, they're indoors.
Yep,
and have a facility.
So it's basketball, wrestling. I think there were some trips. I listed them on the Excel spreadsheet I sent around. So that includes basketball, wrestling, baseball, cheer, and trips.
Yeah. So I think all of this stuff, we need to apply a similar principle that if it's not possible, we have to strike the line item.
Well, and don't forget, you've got a new director coming in. The program can change. There may be different.
Programs can change. That's a great point too. Yep.
Okay, so that's that. And then the third party camps, the other one I wanted to talk about, because the third party camps, I think we need to determine that my understanding, and maybe we need a better information from Councilwoman McCready, are the third party camps are all on hold right now. Is that right?
Yes.
So if they are, then we need to take the revenue out related to those camps, or we need to come up with a appropriate plan for those, because right now the budget has $23,000 of revenue related to those camps. So we either need to open them and try and get as much revenue as we can, or we need to say we're not going to open them and remove $23,000 of revenue from the current budget.
Yeah, so I know Neil has spoken with a lot of the vendors, and they're saying that they, as long as the governor's guidance comes out, if they can open camps, they will, even if they have to restrict the attendees.
So my question would be then to the borough, there's no expense related to these camps. There's only, an administrative fee that we collect. The camps are staffed, run, paid for, operated by outside vendors. So can the council agree that the third party camps can open per the state guidance, that we won't put any further restriction other than what the state does?
I don't know why we would.
Yeah.
I don't either. And so given that circumstance, I think over the course of the next 3 or 4 days, we should ask if that's going to have a revenue impact. Ask the rec director what we should budget. There was 23,000, which was last year's number. Maybe we need 20,000 or 19,000 or something, maybe 25,000. If the demand is greater this year, maybe the demand's greater this year. So I would say that's something else we need to update in the budget between now and Friday as well.
Can we visit the winter camp? Because what happens if we put that in the budget and then the winter camps don't happen because we have a resurgence of during the flu season of COVID?
If they're canceled completely, I think that's not a problem, because right now they're budgeted at expense equal to revenue. The bigger problem for us would be if we ran the camp and the people didn't come.
But we never do that now.
So,
We've seen every time we do the payment of bills, if only 2 people sign up for a camp, it gets canceled. That's what our policy's been all these years anyway. So
the fall and winter programs, I think, is a lower risk.
Tom, is our problem, and I'm asking this a bit rhetorically here. So within the budget, there typically are 2 different lines. And maybe I'm thinking of this in a way that doesn't apply to municipal government. So if we have an expense and a revenue line attached to the recreation budget, right? But we also go down into a granular way into some individual line items. We talked about Bob and the fact that he's going to come and we're likely going to have some new offerings here in rec. Is it better, or is it possible or different, especially with the uncertainty of the winter, to make this budget more of a bucket than it is each individual line, but then have at the department level, have them accountable for each individual line item? Does that make sense what I'm saying?
I understand the question, but I have to defer to Ralph and Leslie for the answer.
Just Run that by me again.
Yeah, let
Jack.
me restate it differently, Ralph. Is it
Okay.
possible for us to have a revenue expectation of $100,000 and an expense expectation of recreation of $100,000 that does not have line items below it, but as the money leaves the master budget into the department budget, for them to outline a plan for that $100,000 for revenue and expenses there, and not in the master budget? Because like was pointed out the entire night, there are uncertainties everywhere in this budget.
Right. What the line items in the budget for these major things are unto themselves. There are categories that break out: wrestling, trips, so on and so forth underneath that, but it's all part of that original, say, $100,000, and that can be changed at any time. That can be, the numbers can change there at all. It's that major line item is what is cast in stone.
So the
So in other words,
the top line number. So the answer was yes.
Yes.
In other
The
words,
answer
you could cancel baseball and do softball instead, and that would be okay.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if that's the better approach here in this uncertain times, to say, look, this is our rec budget, and then have a very clear accountability that goes down below it as to what the expectations are.
That's kind of
what we do.
Yep. I mean, because right now we're squibbling over $10,000 here and $10,000 there. Let's agree on the philosophy and the principle, and we can go from there.
We can do that.
So there was other things to discuss.
For myself, those were the items related to the camp. We've decided that third-party camps can go ahead. Is that right? Based on governor's guidance, third-party camps can open.
Yep.
We need an updated
Yes.
revenue estimate from the rec department on third-party camps for this year. The borough rec camp and the pool will be developed based on additional information we received this week. And we're going to put in something for revenue and expenses for those and try and protect for the possibility of opening, or at least consider that on Friday. The fall and winter programs are currently budgeted with revenue equal to expenses. Thus, if either one was substituted for one, or if one was canceled outright, it wouldn't impact the budget negatively. Is everybody comfortable with those four things?
Yep.
I am.
Yep.
Yep. So can I raise the issue then about the money in the CapEx line? Is that $47,000 still in the budget, or was that removed?
What 47,000?
If we think back, I think it was in March when we had the final pre-COVID budget, and I uncovered that arithmetic error, and it was either 43 or 47,000.
I believe it was 43. Leslie, is that correct?
Yeah, it was 43.
Okay, so that 43 was then, to my knowledge at least, and I don't know if it's in the most recent budget that came out at 158 this afternoon, but that was left in the believe in the CapEx line without not really with any designation for its expense. Is that still there?
Yes, we put it in the capital fund because what we're trying to do is build that fund up, because it has been seriously lowered. And that's our money that when, like, we have a track loader at the landfill that we just found out is broken down, and if we want to buy a new one, it's 200,000. That would come out of that capital account. And right now we don't have much money in there. The goal is to build that up, so in the future we don't have to borrow. We actually have money to buy things when they need to be replaced.
Yeah, I understand that that's the rationale, but the money really wasn't real money. It was a mistake. It was an error, and it got uncovered. And then we said, "Oh, we found this money, and we're going to leave it in the capital fund." We have funds in the capital, and it's a worthwhile goal to build that up over time. But I don't think this is the year to do that. My position is we ought to come in with the lowest possible tax rate to the taxpayer that we can. We have that obligation to them. Everybody's hurting. It's already been pointed out. You only have to drive by St. Bernard's Church to see the lines on Friday St. Bernard's, thank you, Church, to see the lines for the food pantry. Who ever thought when we moved here that we'd see a food pantry, of such a magnitude in our town? And I really feel strongly to the point that I cannot support a budget that has any unnecessary taxation. And while I would agree 100% under normal circumstances that we want to build up our capital funds, this is not the year to do it. We have to return that money to the taxpayer, and it will amount to about a reduction, correct me if I'm wrong, of somewhere in the order of 0.2 to 0.3%. And we're over 2% now. This would bring us down closer to that.
I agree that this is not the year to do it as well. Earlier, pre-COVID, we discussed this. I think it was pre-COVID, it was a choice between two different good ideas. One good idea is return the money to the taxpayers, and the other good idea was to build up our capital fund. Both good ideas. But post-COVID, I think that the returning it to taxpayers this year makes more sense.
My final plea is that every household in this town is trying to figure out how to make their budget work, and what are they going to cut, what we're going to spend, what we're going to do, what we're going to defer. And I think the borough needs to do the same. And I think we need to defer this. We need to take that 43,000 out and reduce our tax rate.
I think we've already done that. Leslie, Ralph, didn't we take money out of the capital cash to be used if necessary?
Leslie,
Yeah, we made money that we had budgeted in the line item for capital. We moved to other accounts where we may need more money to get through the situation that we're in, so that it will be more flexible, and with the hopes that we won't touch it. And then at the end of the year in November, when we're allowed to make budget transfers, we would transfer that back into capital improvement. It just gives us flexibility to use that money on other things if we have an emergency situation that we need to do that.
So I think, I've already contingently tapped it. So I'd be, I guess, put it away for the rainy day, like the loader that, might need repairing, because it is. What's the capital fund budget right now? Balance right now?
Leslie will have that.
And what would be the savings? I'm sorry.
What was it? Leslie,
go ahead, Leslie.
Our capital improvement fund right now has $20,000 in it.
Yeah, that'll buy a lot.
So how do you take 43 out? I only have 20. I mean.
No, that's not right, John. So what would we be adding into it under the pre-COVID budget?
It was 315,000, I think.
315 on top of the 20. So for a total of 335, right? So what we're talking about is the difference between 335 and minus 43 from that. So 290 something.
Hang on. So you lost me there. So we have 20. We have 20,000 now, and the budget.
20,000 is what we had at the end of 2019.
Yeah. So if the budget passes, how much do we have in, as it currently stands? How much would be in the capital fund the day after the budget passes?
As proposed today.
As proposed today.
A better way to put it. Yeah.
As it stands right now, it would be around 220,000.
Gotcha. Okay.
But that 220,000, it doesn't reflect the fact that we put 100,000 on another line because of a COVID-19 contingency, right? So that's really 320 that we're talking about.
So if you remove the 43, you have 180.
180. No.
I'm so sorry. You said
180 plus the 100 that was moved for flexibility, because we have revenues that we can't predict. This is a tough year. We're trying to protect against that. So I think that we need to count that 100,000. That 100,000 is on that line as well.
And the new track loader costs $250.
Oh, I'm not going to go to taxpayers and ask them to pay for a new track loader this year.
And they can't bring anything to the landfill.
I think it needs to.
We could rent something. I think it goes down to what Councilman Hammond is saying, is that we have to make trade-offs and decisions just like every person in our town and in our country right now.
And I also want to ask, can someone put it in terms of like dollar terms per household? Like the average taxpayer would save if we did what Jeff Hammond is suggesting on the CapEx, not putting that 43 in there. What's the average per household? Maybe we could get that before Friday.
I thought that was 0.2 or 0.3% reduction in taxes, was it not?
Not per person.
Sure, it is per person because as a percentage, it would apply per person. I think the 43,000 would be reflected by a number of similar to 0.3 or higher on your budget, on your taxes. So if, let's just say for argument's sake, it was 2.7%, it would come down to 2.4% increase. Is that correct, Ralph or Leslie?
Hang
Leslie?
on. Give me a minute.
It'd be like if your tax bill's 10 grand, it'd be like 40 bucks or something.
Yeah.
So how much did we land at with what's actually in the capital fund right now? Did we land with?
As of the end of 2019, it was $20,000.
And if this budget passed, just for discussion's sake, was passed as is, it'd be like 220 or something like that.
That is correct, but it's really ostensibly 320 because we moved 100,000 for flexibility to another line. And that 100,000, assuming we don't have more unanticipated revenue than we've already incurred, which would be a downside scenario for us. So we don't have that, we would move that 100,000 back at the end of the year as well. So that 220 that you referred to correctly, Councilman Donahue, is really 320.
Where is that 100? Is it offsetting our expenses?
In the roads account.
So there's a good chance we could spend it.
No, we put in, we talked to the finance team, Ralph Maresca and Leslie Roberson, and we put in controls in the system to not spend that money unless we need it for COVID-related expenses.
So we could spend it.
That is true. And if we had those expenses and that money was on the CapEx line, Mayor, we would have no place to go to get that money.
No,
So
but there's no guarantee it's going to go back into capital. That's the point I was making.
There's no guarantee, but if we'd have the same problem and less flexibility if we didn't do it the way we did it, we'd have the same problem by the end of the year.
The capital is lower than we think it is.
I'm sorry, Mayor, I missed what you were saying because I was talking also. Go ahead.
No, my point was we could still end up with less in capital at the end of the year because that get used. No, I totally agree with the flexibility of having it in the budget, but we could spend it. And so at the end of the year, we may not have the 300. It may only be 200.
220, yes, that's right. You're correct to say that if we had unexpected expenses that exceeded, what we've already budgeted, mainly related to COVID or solely related to COVID-19, or we had revenue shortfalls, that's one of the only places we have to go to try and cover ourselves. But you're right. If we spent it, then it would be gone.
So if we reduce the amount to be raised by $43,000, the increase in the average assessment tax bill, which is about $722,000 assessment, as it stands right now, the increase for the whole year is $161.95. If we reduce it by $43,000, it goes down to $147.78 for the year. So it's a savings of $15.
$15 on each tax bill?
For the average assessments tax bill, it's a difference of about $15 for the year.
Ralph, what is your target CapEx fund? Because I've heard different numbers. What's the target?
$1 million.
Sorry, Ralph, was that your answer?
No, I mean, Chad, you mean for this year or?
No, just
or
it's so yeah. I mean, as for the borough, what is your target capex fund allocation on a year-on-year basis?
Well, we were striving to reach.
That background noise, can we?
I don't know what that is.
Oh, so that might be me.
I don't know who was doing it, but I didn't see anybody.
No, we're good.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ralph.
Years past, we had been striving to reach close to or try to get to $1 million or as close as we could to it in order to pay cash for both items that we may need from year to year, like a broken loader or whatever other piece of major equipment. Trucks, some of our bigger trucks are $175,000 a piece. Our smaller trucks are $120,000 a piece. And so we could pay cash for those items. And then the balance that we would try to allocate at least $500,000 in cash per year to maintain our roads, again, hopefully without borrowing. If we needed a really major road project, the thought was that we could take cash, and we always get DOT grants of $200,000 and $300,000. That was a long-term goal.
So when do we have to? Because look, I hear both points. I mean, I've made this point before that we need to be in a fiscal position where we aren't borrowing every time a loader breaks, and having for me a balance. A capex balance to $20,000 at the fiscal end of 2019, when the goal is $1 million, is, even if the $1 million number isn't right, the $20,000 number is clearly not right. But I also agree with Dr. Hammond that right now is a special year. So when do we have to make a decision about this?
Well, I'd like to also point out or remind people of Councilman Hammond's other point was that this was not money that we took away from something else to put onto this line. This is money that we put together a plan that was a pre-COVID budget that we felt was a responsible fiscal plan at the time, not knowing that this $43,000 was available. And I think that makes this situation slightly unique. So that, combined with the fact that this is a tough year for people, we should minimize taxes. And again,
do we vote in these individual lines, like if we're talking about this, or is it an omnibus thing we have to take all in or all out, Jack? Or somebody can answer that, Or is the budget, like we're discussing this individual line, for example, do we make a vote on this as to amend it or not? Or is it a budget, like an omnibus budget, to take a whole, I forget, from last year?
It could be, at the moment, because it's not introduced, it could just be changed.
Right.
It could just be, the number could just be adjusted down, and Leslie would put that in the budget, and that would be what she would be voting on Friday.
That's right.
I think we need to make the decision on this one tonight so that we don't have a risk of us not agreeing on it.
I agree. One last thing.
If I could point out, you're saying is we're going to save somebody $15 for the year, and we're going to, and we're shortchanging the future, which means like maybe next year we're going to have a 4% increase because we're being so tight this year. That's my concern is, part of our AAA rating is because we keep numbers level. Really start, having them up and down like this is just not good fiscal management.
Yeah, and that's why I ask. I'm more in favor of keeping it in capex, but so if we vote or however we decide it, straw poll, however this works.
But don't forget that money was not in the capex to begin with. That money was a mathematical error.
Yeah, but we need it in capex. I mean, if there's a place to put it,
but we were prepared to go ahead with a budget that did not include it there.
Well, I'm glad we found it.
We decided, let's put it there.
I think that's a good place for it to be. I mean, that's just my opinion,
Well, then if it was such a good place to do, why wasn't it put in the budget in the first place? In fact, why wasn't it made 60?
Because we only had it. The number was uncovered. So Jeff, so you would disagree. Big deal. It's like, I think it should be in capex.
I think it's a worthy goal to build up our capital account. I just think, and we can deride $15, which is, by the way, it's times 4 because it's it's a quarterly tax bill. But to some people, that's a lot of money.
That's for the year, right? Was that the year, Leslie?
That's the annual amount, not the quarterly amount.
The annual? Okay, I stand corrected. But I just think it's a matter of principle. We're supposed to be fiscally responsible.
I think building on CapEx, my interpretation that, I agree with you, but my interpretation is to put it in CapEx,
Okay, so I would just like to respond to one point that was made. One point was made that, it was only $15 this year. It's a small thing to consider. Let's not worry about it, and let's keep things even. Well, if it's only a small thing now, then next year we could add this small thing back in, and it would have a small impact, as you're saying, it's having a small impact this year. And I don't think it's going to swing it from 2% to 4%. As we just highlighted here, it's probably 0.3%. And if we need it next year, that's the magnitude of the difference next year. If there's other needs, then they're unrelated to this. So I think it's a responsible decision. We can address this in the future if we need to. And you can't call it a minimum, a small impact this year and a major impact next year. The impact's the same this year as it is next year.
Anyone else?
So sorry, I just wanted to confirm with Leslie. Leslie, the numbers you gave us, the 161 versus the 147, that's the amount of the increase.
Yes.
Based on the current.
Yes.
Related only to the $43,000 decision.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I just wanted to make sure that was so like we're increasing taxes by $161 as of today. If you put the 43,000 in there, you're increasing taxes by $147 and the change.
Yep.
Okay. That's what I wanted to clarify. Thank you.
I would just make the point that if we isolated every decision to the number of dollars it impacts somebody, then the only decision that would make any, measurable impact would be multi-million-dollar decisions. So I think that, in terms of being responsible, each of these decisions adds up with each other. So.
All right. So what do you want to do? How do we do this? Jack, how do you want us to make it?
Yeah, I would take a straw poll, so then Leslie will know whether or not to include it or not.
What if we split the difference? I think both are important. Look, running on a we need to build up our capital because we cannot have a year where we end up with essentially a bank account of 0 in our capital account.
That's not what
I'd be willing to split the difference if we could agree that some of that CapEx money could go towards the pool if we need it because of now, and some of that Corona expenses could guarantee me that we're going to have a pool this summer, even if, we're going to lose some money.
20 we put back in operating.
Yeah. And make it so that residents have something to do and somewhere to go here this summer.
Yeah.
I don't think you're understanding the magnitude of why people need a place to go.
Yeah, Christina, I think it's very likely that the pool functions. The thing that I'm worried about is what Murphy's going to say in the morning. He wakes up and he says, "Look, we're only going to allow 5 people in the pool."
I don't think he's going to say that, and you don't.
Yeah,
there's no way
really
he's
sounds
gonna
ridiculous.
be that drastic.
Let's
why
open
realistic.
them then?
Yeah, look, I right now I'm putting nothing past him because his lack of consistency has been overwhelming. So I want to see what he says in the morning.
I doubt it's going to be that drastic.
I trust me. I hope you're right in a lot of ways.
I'll call him tonight.
Anybody else want to split the difference?
I think we should return the money to taxpayers.
Listen, it's an attractive idea to split the difference, but the money wasn't there for that intended purpose in the first place. And now we're jerry-rigging things in order to give it an intended purpose. I think, and we keep talking about the 20,000, but it's not 20,000. It's 300,000. Now, how much of that we spend is going to be up to us. And that's one of the fallacies of keeping this money there, because now we're going to look for something to spend it on.
We're also need
No,
something.
I
We're
don't-
going to
I
have
don't
needs. They're going to spend money.
Yeah,
on.
I don't think that's the right characterization, Jeff.
Well, I
You
think
know,
it is.
Look,
I think it's breaking. We're down.
When
So-
we ask every year for the budget, we ask for capital expenses, what people,
Yeah.
departments need. We get a $2 million number.
And Jeff, I've been pretty clear that one of my goals in the fiscal budget is not to have to borrow money whenever we need a road improvement. And I think I believe that's responsible for our borough. But I also hear you about the year. So, yes, it was not initially in the budget, but I think getting to a reasonable CapEx line is important for our borough and the health of our borough going forward.
But if we follow Councilwoman Zamara's suggestion, that's not going to change the line any, the CapEx line any. It's going to go to the operating budget for the pool.
Right.
Well, 20 grand.
If you're following Councilwoman Zamara's, and my understanding was she's only going to agree to it if we do it for the pool and we guarantee the pool's opening, which I thought was not our decision tonight.
Well, I think we're going to decide that in part on Thursday, right? Or Friday, whenever we decide.
I don't want this hanging out there on Friday so that we stop the budget over this on Friday. I don't want to stop the budget over this on Friday. I want to agree it tonight if we can.
Gina, what's your opinion on the?
I mean, I'd be willing to split the difference. I mean, I see both sides of the argument. I mean, not raising taxes as much, but I also
let's
don't
take the
think that.
opposite. Let's just take the opposite tack. Let's just, for the sake of debate, say, okay, it's important to build up our capital line, and this is only $15. I've been told. So let's add another 40,000 because it'll only be another $15. At some point you have to realize that our tax bill is only somewhat 22, 24% of what the total tax bill for the residents' property taxes. And you start adding 15 here and 20 there and 30 there, and it starts getting to be onerous. And at some point, you're the straw that breaks the camel's back. But if it's such an insignificant amount and we have such a great need, then hey, why are we stopping at 43? Let's just build it into the budget. It's because it wasn't in the budget in the first place.
Yeah, there was 200 in the budget though for capital that we took from it.
Yeah, I mean, and I hear what you're saying, Jeff.
275, Mayor.
I hear what you're saying, but I think that we've, as a borough, I don't think that we've raised the taxes enough over the past couple of years. And so this is kind of a gift of some money to keep in our capital as well.
Wow.
I mean, I'm seeing both sides of things.
I think you'd be surprised if you talk to the average person on the street if you told them we haven't raised taxes enough, if that's what I heard you say.
Yeah, in the past couple of years, that's what I understand based on all of the numbers that we have. We've increased our debt, but we haven't increased the taxes.
We haven't been paying the debt back at the level we should have.
That may be true.
I think the best way to say it is that we haven't raised the taxes in line with the way the debt from the road referendum of 2015 at the same rate that debt was increasing. So the rate of the increase in the debt, which was not all, but largely from the 15 road referendum, we took a slow and steady approach to increasing the amount that we're budgeting for that, which is not, the road referendum monies, the borrowing occurred in a shorter period of time since 2015. Therefore, the debt increased at a rate faster than our steady state raise in the amount that we're budgeting to pay it.
So since we're officially bartering, which is sort of fun here, look, I'll propose the following. I believe a long-term plan, and not to get it, because I know we've had some of these discussions, Tom, in regards to our roads and getting this town back to where I think it needs to be fiscally. I would propose that as we're in a unique situation now, Tom's already proposed starting to fix the situation in the following calendar year, that we freeze anything other than salary or contracted expenses as we go forward till we can start reversing this curve of expenses versus revenue.
My point would be that we didn't get the fiscal rating that we got by being fiscally irresponsible. So when we talk about reversing a problem, I think we need to clarify whether or not a problem exists in the first place. But that's not to say that we're problem free. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is that I want to make sure that we're not mischaracterizing the situation either.
So I'll characterize it. So having a capital account with $20,000 in it and having a debt line that's growing, and a sunset that's obviously not of our choosing, but in 2033 is a situation that I don't personally find to be appropriate in the way that I would look to do this.
So I think rather than talking about a single year number, which is I think a little bit it's a little bit too narrow a focus. We need to look over the 5, and we even have a 10 and 15 year debt service plan. And I think that look at that holistically. I think that the conclusion isn't as cut and dry as you're characterizing it. So I would propose that we take a deep dive into the 5, 10, and 15 year debt service plan and make sure that we're making proactive decisions such that we're not reacting to a number that popped up one year and going to taking drastic measures to fix a problem that's not a long-term issue for us. Now, I'm not characterizing this as any type of issue. What I'm saying is we shouldn't focus on a single number, but rather look at the larger picture before we make a decision about what's appropriate.
We need
a question. Ralph, can you tell us what gets us our AAA rating? How is that? What is that based on?
Well, in 2015, we went to both the rating agencies, or the major rating agencies, and have them. They did come out and review us, and the main points that they did comment on is that our revenues were constant. They didn't fluctuate very much up, but they certainly didn't fluctuate much down. That our fund balance remaining after we take the various dollars out to balance the budget was also a healthy more than 6 or 7% that the state looks at as a healthy balance to be left unallocated. We were consistently using around 1.5 million to balance the budget for a number of years. I think about four or 5 in a row. It was the consistency that they looked at and thought that it was a very positive thing. We showed that we did not have various money issues with paid vacations. We don't accrue vacation time. We don't accrue sick time for buyouts, or not buyouts, for payouts at the end of the year, and some other things that a lot of municipalities had. So we were solid there. And our debt was at the time, our debt was had been going down, I think about 3 consecutive years, or 2 consecutive. I think it was 3. Forgive me if I'm off a year, but it was trending downward.
But to clarify, Ralph, when the rating agencies looked at us, they looked at us with a view not just to what our debt was in the past, but also with the debt that we were asking to incur as well. So the $10 million worth of debt that the rating agency was looking at that debt and saying, can you afford that debt? Not only what debt we already have or where the trend was going, but can we gather more, take on the new debt and still responsibly be able to manage our budget?
Right. That is correct. And the fact that it went to referendum and the constituents of Bernardsville passed that referendum 2-1 was also very encouraging. That the community was behind us in doing this. That was all considered.
We added more debt 2 years ago, didn't we?
I believe it was 2 years ago. Yes.
I did a calculation, Mayor, and I don't want to just throw numbers off the top of my head, but the vast majority of the debt that we currently hold is due to debt that pre-existed 2015 or was part of the $10 million referendum debt. And I don't have the exact number, so I don't want to go out, but it was a vast majority, way more than 50%, approaching 90%, but I don't have the exact number. I'd ask Ralph or Leslie to provide that to us. But the vast majority of our debt pre-existed 2015 and/or was incurred as part of the road referendum since then.
Right, but we did add $2 million in 2015.
We can, in 2015?
No, 17? 17, right.
No, I don't think it was that amount, but we can check all the numbers and provide that to the full council.
But Ralph, what are we taking out this year for from fund balance? Is it about the same amount?
Taking out for our capital program?
No, to balance the budget. You said every year we take $1 million.
Oh, yeah, Leslie, help me out with this. I think it's more. It's in the 1.6 range, isn't it? Or
It's 1.725.
oh,
More than
1.725. Okay. And Leslie, our projected fund balance remaining in as this budget sits now is got to be, I believe, 3 something, correct?
That sounds right. Yeah.
Okay.
What percent is that? I mean, you can said we have 6%.
There's not a hard and fast number, Mayor, but 5 to 6% is deemed very good of your total budget.
Right. So what do we have now if we took 1.7?
Leslie, maybe you can do that math,
I'm looking
please.
for what our starting number is.
I'm sorry. I want her to go home.
Sorry. Where is it? $260 left. Is 13%. Yeah. Yeah, it's 260,000, almost $261,000, which is about 13%.
That's what we have left in fund balance.
Yeah, after we take the amount we're using in the budget, we'll have 13% left.
That seems high somehow. I don't know. Anyway, it sounds like we're split on this 43,000.
I could go for 50-50 if it moves the conversation along.
Watch it on being from Ohio. They're fighting another team. We're good. We're good.
Is that your kids down, John? They're loud. Thank you.
Yeah, Fortnite's an intense game apparently, so I got to keep it muted. Small house.
Christine, is your opinion that it has to be dedicated, the half has to be dedicated to something?
I would like it to be.
But does it have to be? There's the kid.
Yeah.
So if it's just put back on the CapEx line, what's your opinion? I'm not sure where you're going.
No, she wants 20,000 for a rec or something, right? Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Towards summer rec or even winter or recreation.
Just the recreation in general.
Not to
programs. Just recreation
exactly. Programs, even if, maybe it could go to help ensure that the pool opens.
But I thought our premise on that was that that we were going to have a go no go decision based on enrollment. So we don't want to subsidize something that we might have found that doesn't have the attractiveness to the people. By the way, I think it's just to give you a little bit extra information here. There's already been a survey put out on the bubble while we've been talking
Oh, yeah?
They asked 3 questions. If the town pool opens, I would plan to go. If the rec camp's open, I will send my kids. If the town pool opens, I will not go. Just to give you the votes so far,
Please.
unscientific as it may be, 96 people said they would go to the pool if it opened up.
Okay.
33 said they would not go. And then 46 said they would send their kids to rec camp. So right now, there seems to be a fair amount, about 100 people that are willing to sign up for the pool. I don't know what our minimum required is to make it financially feasible, but to the Councilwoman Zamara's point, there is a clear interest in it.
Yeah.
And I don't think we need to subsidize it, quite frankly.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna have to
We
either.
weren't
Jeff.
going to trust data like that?
Huh?
I thought we just said before we weren't going to trust data or like that. That's not science.
Well, I don't remember saying that, and I don't think we have any other data, quite frankly.
I think the best you can do is some kind of a straw man.
I think what I predicted was that any data we receive is going to reinforce the position we already have.
There you go.
That's
what I said.
confirmation bias.
That's what I said.
Wait a minute.
I believe, but here, I want to clarify the $43,000 question. The $43,000 question, I thought we had, two. I thought, and for the pre-COVID budget, I thought we had 2 good options. One is return to taxpayers, and the other was put it on a CapEx, as Councilman Donahue said, for a rainy day. I think post-COVID, we have a responsibility to keep the budget as low as possible. This is an area that wasn't. We had a fiscally responsible budget ready to go pre-COVID that did not have this money in there. There's no requirement that this money be in there to have a responsible budget, in my opinion. So I think we should return it to taxpayers. But I don't think we should put it on an operating cost line, which the money goes away. Then we don't have it for either thing. We haven't returned it to taxpayers, and we haven't, put it away for a rainy day either. So I think the choice should be we return the money to taxpayers, or we put it where it is today, which is on the CapEx line.
100% either are.
To return it to taxpayers, it would go into revenue. Yes?
If we return it to taxpayers, it would be
a revenue.
We would reduce the amount we need to raise taxes by that amount. Yeah.
Right.
I think I see a solo. He's really far away though.
So?
So I move that we take a straw poll on the question of return it to taxpayers, put it on the CapEx line.
These kids are getting focused.
So my straw poll vote on that is that we return to taxpayers this year.
Okay. John?
CapEx.
Chad?
Give me a second. Sorry.
I'll do mine. Taxpayers so they can join the pool.
Gina?
You're on mute, Gina.
Mute.
I know I'm trying to get my kids to bed. My husband's out of town tonight, so just me.
Let them vote.
Yeah.
Yeah, let them vote.
Okay. No, I need your vote on the 40 CapEx or tax relief.
Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. Did you move on from me, or are you waiting for me?
No, I need your response. CapEx or taxpayers.
I'd love for it to go to the pool too, so we could keep it for CapEx and help get it toward the pool if we can.
But it's not going to do that. It's either going to stay on the CapEx or it's going to go to. It's not going to go to the pool. That's operations.
Right. It's either going to go in against the tax levy or it's going to go in capital reserve. So which of those two? Gina? No. Which of the two? It either goes towards tax relief or it goes in the capital reserve. So which one?
I mean, given our, I'm like 6 in one, half a dozen in the other.
I know.
I guess if it's in there and it was found, we'll just keep it in CapEx.
CapEx. Okay. Chad?
I don't think we can tolerate having $20,000 in our account like we did last year. I think we have to keep it in tax and CapEx. As much as I hate to say that, but I think that we have to start to build that account.
Just so we're clear, it's going to have 220 this way, not 20.
No, but the issue, but we always spend it down. So yeah, it goes up to 220, but then I'm sure we'll end up spending a large portion of that down this year.
And if it's 260 or 280, we'll spend that down as well.
Well, I think we need to be careful about that.
The straw poll is done. Debate is over.
Straw poll is done. It's 3-3. It's 3-3. This is the issue. We need 4 votes to pass the budget.
We started out this discussion about the budget, talking about how each of the departments were asked to cut, and they did a heroic job of cutting. And now we're talking about.
We're not passing a budget. We're just taking a straw poll, but we have to have a tiebreaker somehow.
Understood, but I'm just saying that we shouldn't move ahead with something that's so tenuous as this. We need to agree is all I'm saying.
Does the mayor get to break ties in straw polls? Is there official rules or is this?
No, I'm thinking ahead for when the budget is being adopted.
I don't think we'll be that far apart on the budget. I think this is just, philosophical differences on this particular item.
Well, people, they draw lines in the sand based on philosophy. I mean, I'm not going to support a budget that has any amount of taxing that I really feel that I can't justify. And it may seem like small to some people who are voting for it, but I think it's a matter of principle.
I think we can responsibly add the money back in if it determined that we need it in the future. And if to the extent that somebody says it's a small impact this year, then it'll be a small impact in a future.
Well, why don't we follow with Chad's suggestion? We split it so to some tax relief and some, restoring of the CapEx or the capital fund.
That seems like the best choice since you're at a draw.
I mean, I'd go for that.
I need to find a
compromise.
I need to find a long-term way. And I know, Tom, you don't like my choice of words, but I'm sorry. Jeff, you're saying drawing a line in the sand. Having a $14 million debt line and $20,000 in CapEx is not correct to me. And we have to have a long-term plan to right those two ships. And from my perspective, adding more debt is not the solution to getting out of debt. Having a CapEx where we can pay for the things that we need. I just heard about the loader issue. In my opinion, is the way that we need to go.
I think that.
Can we compromise? Can we split it? I mean, you're going to all keep saying the same thing over and over again, and we're going to be here till 11 o'clock. It doesn't sound like anyone's going to change their.
Is it a good compromise if nobody's particularly 100% satisfied? I mean, it's,
Otherwise, we're going to be stuck here because I don't think anybody's moving.
I mean, I'm good with the 50-50. I said that before too.
There's a lot of people on our call. Maybe we can give the opportunity for residents to weigh in, or?
No, this is our decision.
I agree with the mayor. We should decide. It's our responsibility.
And it's not the public hearing. Public hearing, they can weigh in, but not tonight.
Okay, then as long as that, that can happen, I guess I want to move forward, and if that's the only way, then.
Well, obviously, could be a very interesting point in the public hearing. I think it's a good point that you raise, but at the public hearing is the correct place to do it.
It'll be too late to make any changes in the budget then.
Well, but Jeff has already said. Well, I believe it was either Jeff or Ralph that look, there may be some flexibility in the final date if it's necessary.
We're going to push the budget back for this decision?
No.
No, but if Jack, let me ask you, Jack, you want to unmute for a second?
Okay.
What happens if when we get to the public hearing and there's a big public outcry and we say, okay, we want to change the budget? At that point, what happens?
if you're within the 110.5 rule, you can do it, that Ralph outlined.
Okay.
Or else you have to go back and get, if you change it more, you have to get director's approval.
So if this, how much is this 43 going to change it? Would that affect it?
Well, Leslie will have to answer that one.
I mean, would we be within, is that something that we could?
The line item is actually 10%, up or down on the line item.
Okay.
Is that right, Ralph? That's not what you told me. You told me 3% on the line, Ralph.
Hey, you said 3% tonight.
Ralph, you're on
You're
mute.
You're on mute, Ralph.
Sorry. Yes. No, I know I said 3%. That, Jack, it's 10%?
Yeah, it's add a new appropriation in an amount of in excess of 1% of the total budget. 2, increase or decrease any item of appropriation by more than 10%. Or 3, increase the amount to be raised by taxes by more than 5%. So those are,
was that changed recently?
no, it's 10 per line item.
So what we're talking about, any line item can be changed by 10%, not 3%. Up or down, 10%.
Yeah.
Forgive me.
That's all right. I texted it to you earlier,
But even 10% of this line, Leslie, is like $18,000. Am I right, Leslie?
Yeah, if we were to change it by $43,000, it would be 21.6% of the line.
But if we put 20 in now,
Yeah.
If we be a little bit over.
Yeah.
Right. So if we take 20 out, so you're saying take 20 out?
well, let's leave 20 in CapEx and take 23 out. How's that? And that way, or the other way around. I don't care. Doesn't have to be exactly.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting point. I'd be look. I'm gonna reach out to a lot of my constituents over the next few days. This is a very important philosophical discussion that we're having right here.
Yeah.
Well, your constituents is the same as our constituents, Chad. Just to point that out.
No, but we all have different networks that we tap into, Jeff.
Okay.
So are we for the budget that we want Leslie to do for Friday? Do we want to split it?
It's an unplanned event.
We know that, Joe.
Yeah, okay, but the point is that it wasn't apparently needed beforehand.
I know. We heard that. I just need a decision. Are we doing a half and half, or are we not doing anything? What are we doing?
I can't speak for the others, but I'll vote against it.
I'm voting for tax relief.
So what are we telling Leslie here?
I can hold it. I'll pick out 2 minutes.
Well, just, I don't know, split it, 23-20, you know? Pick which way to go, Mayor.
No, I think Councilman Hammond and O'Day are saying that they don't want to split it. I think that's what they just said.
I'm saying I don't want to split it. It goes to tax relief.
It goes to CapEx. I mean, we're back to square one.
So now what do we do, Jack?
Cry? Well,
No,
what was Councilwoman Tamara's? Was she going along with the?
Willing to split, I think, weren't you?
Yeah, so that would be 4-2.
Sorry, what's Christine Zamara? What is your vote?
Split, yes? Wait,
This is the budget we're voting on Friday, right?
Right.
We're voting on whether or not the 43,000 goes to tax relief or CapEx. If it goes to CapEx, it's not necessarily dedicated to the pool, but it would go to a CapEx line. And in fact, to be conceptually consistent with what the Councilman McQueen and Councilman Donahue were saying, we'd have to just leave it there and actually not spend it. So it wouldn't go to anything. It would just not be spent. So the choice is the money for tax relief or the money goes to a CapEx holding fund where we would hold the money.
Where we'll need to spend it when things break and wear out and roofs leak.
Or a future expense.
Yeah.
What we're talking about right now is we're asking Christine if she's okay with splitting it. 20 goes to tax relief, 20 stays in CapEx. That's the current question.
Tax relief.
So now we're at 3 and 3.
Now we're 3 and 3. We won't have a budget.
Come on, we got 3, we're going to split it, and so someone's got to swing, do the swing vote.
Look, if it helps, and I'm not trying to push. It's not. I'm not trying to push just my. I'm not just trying to push my personal opinion. But let me explain why I think it's still responsible. If we don't raise the taxes this year, and we need to raise the taxes by this same amount next year, which is when we would have this unexpected expense, or later in the future, we can raise the taxes by this limited amount then when we have the need to do it. And I don't think it's irresponsible to return to the taxpayers, given the circumstances this year, and we'll address what we need in the future when we get there. I just think it's it's reasonable. It's not the only way to do things, but I think it's a reasonable way to do things.
Yeah, I mean, you can think of it the exact opposite way though, too, that because of the unprecedented year, if something does come up, we don't have that much in the capital account as it is, which means we won't have the money to buy something if we need it.
We have $183,000, $177,000 at a minimum, and possibly $277,000 in that fund, given the approach that we're talking about.
One additional piece of information that I need.
Yep, me too. Sorry. Yep, hold on. The end of 2018, what was the capital fund amount?
20,000.
No, he said 2018.
Yeah, I'm going back one more year.
Oh. The end
Just
of
wondering how much we spent in 2019, essentially.
I was going to ask the exact same question.
As of the end of 2018, we had 147,962.
And then how much was added into that 147,962 in the 2019 budget?
200. 200.
Or while you're looking, Leslie, to make sure you're answering the right question. What was the total of reduction of CapEx in the 2019 calendar year?
Yeah.
Or fiscal year?
Yeah, that's really what we're both getting at.
You're looking for how much we spent out of
Yep.
it?
Yes.
Yep.
Looks like we spent $142. I did some cleaning up of the books last year, so there's different accounts. Hang on.
Jack, can I ask you a question in the meantime?
Yes.
If we're at an impasse here and we can't introduce the budget, then what? We push it off the next meeting?
Well, for introduction, you only need a majority. It's adoption. It's like an ordinance.
So actually, we can leave this till Friday.
Till Friday.
Yes, and you can introduce.
And then we either vote for it or we don't.
Right.
Okay, so.
My only concern was if we wait till Friday and then we can't agree Friday, then we're going to delay the budget.
Oh, then I break the tie.
For introduction, that's correct.
For introduction, that's correct. But then if we get to July 13th and we don't have 4 votes to support the budget, then it's a moot point that we moved it forward.
What's so wrong with Chad's suggestion? Both needs get served, both priorities get served, and we can move the conversation forward. And, you know, everyone's got something to sort of like address their priorities. It says 50-50 is to me the logical answer, or 23 to tax relief and 20 to CapEx. I mean, you know, whatever the number you want to be within that range.
I was waiting for Leslie to come back with the answer to Chad's and
It looks like it's 142. That was the right answer. 142.
But the only thing I would say, and I wanted, you know, that I'm not trying to cut off the answer, but I don't think that it's helpful for us to look at a single year or even 2 years and say, you know, what should we do? Well, we need to look at a multi-year trend, both in the past and going forward. And that's what the 5-year, 10-year debt service plan is for. So I welcome the conversation. I'd like to have the conversation, and I'd like to look at it over a period like that, which I think is more instructive than looking at an individual year in isolation.
Tom, I'm aligned to that. I'll put a period there. I'm aligned to that because, in my opinion, we need a long-term solution to what I perceive to be a problem. But the issue is, and I don't want to protract this conversation any longer than we have to, so I'll just make one statement, then I'll be done. You know, we go and we pass the budget, then another year goes by, and then we're back in the same situation where we haven't addressed what I believe the underlying issue is. So I'm trying to get to that underlying issue and build up our capital reserve in a way that allows, and what my opinion is, makes long-term sense for this borough. But I agree, this year is very challenging, and you know, this is a challenging time that we're in.
Make my final plea. We are now today officially in a recession. Let's raise taxes when people have jobs. Let's raise taxes when people get their businesses up and running again. This is not the time to do it. Even if it seems like an insignificant amount, we should be cutting ourselves to the bone just like every family in town is doing it.
I agree with that, Jeff.
And when I got elected, I promised people that we're going to look at every line of the budget and we're going to scrutinize every line. This is one of every line. And, you know, if we need to raise taxes next year by the $43,000, then we can tell taxpayers we didn't raise it last year when we could have. We're raising it this year when we actually need the money, and explain it to them. And it has the same impact, except there's one more year that they didn't have to pay the higher taxes. It doesn't put us in a riskier situation at all.
Okay, I think we're done here.
Except we need to agree to direct Leslie what to do with the $43,000. So that it's ready to go on Friday and we've got an agreement. In my opinion, that's what we should do.
We're not going to get to one if we're at 3 and 3.
Well, I don't know. Chad seems to be reconsidering.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think I spent the $14 that I was saving already in this conversation. So, I mean, we've got 25 people on this call that are listening to us go around and round for $14 a household. Let's just give it back to them.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Maybe like right here on a box up right here, that's like center zone and some height.
That's 4.
Yeah, I'm with Gina.
Okay. Leslie put it back into tax relief.
Drive a tough bargain, Jeff. Remember this for me in the future, would you?
Yeah. They talk until they win. Okay. Request for parking decal refund.
Sorry. I thought we were done. I forgot there was more on the agenda.
So you see, a few bucks does make a difference. People want a refund on their parking decal. What was that, $2?
See.
No, it's a lot more than that.
$2.50 or something.
Let me just get this up. What is it that we're doing here? Anthony, you want to just explain this?
Yeah, we had someone purchase a parking decal that's $300 for the whole year. they only use it for 2 months, which equates to using $50 if you break the $300 down per month. Even though we don't sell a monthly decal, we just sell an annual one. And they're looking for a refund now that because their job situation has changed. They're looking for a refund for the rest of the 10 months that are going to be unused, which is $250. So that's the refund it would be if it was decided to give it back.
Do we have any administrative expenses that we incur? Like we have to pay the vendor that's managing this for us or anything?
No, and the only expense we have is when we buy the decals toward the end of the year. But other than that, no, there's no expenses that we have to pay to the vendor.
I think if we're going to consider a refund, it should be from the date that the request was made, not retroactive, because if it gets out that we're providing retroactive refunds, then we could be hit with a lot of requests to refund back to a date in the past. But if the request came in, if we're going to consider a refund, it should be from the date the request came in.
Yeah, I wanted to ask how many decals we actually have out.
Yeah, do we have a policy at all on refunds for decals? I mean, it doesn't say when you buy it, you're committing to a year or...
There isn't anything in the ordinance. I looked up in the ordinance and the resolution. It doesn't say anything about
That should be addressed, just to be clear, otherwise it's.
But historically, the council has not given refunds.
We
Absent
have
extraordinary circumstances.
Sorry, Jack, what was that?
Historically, the council has not granted refunds except in extraordinary circumstances.
What's considered extraordinary?
I don't recall any time that they actually granted a refund.
Oh.
There may have been, but I don't recall.
The only one that I can remember was, I think it was earlier this year, where someone bought a decal, then like a week later, their job situation changed, and we gave them back, but they did not use it for more than a week. That was about it.
Yeah, I remember that one. But how many do we have that are out for this year?
We've probably sold, and this is a rough number, I would say maybe like 80.
Is that normal for a year?
Yeah. It used to be a lot more in years
past,
but now we only sell about that. Yeah. And that's individual decals, not counting replacements. That's like to one person. I'm counting that as just unique people. I'd say about 80.
And it's good for the full year?
Yes.
Yes.
And is it decal for the train station or for the Emmerman lot or where?
This is a train station.
Train
We
station.
sell them for the Emmerman lot, but this one in question is the train station.
Can they be transferred? Can you sell it to? Can you independent? If I had one and I'm not going to use it, I can sell it to my neighbor or no?
No, because we write the decal. We write the license plate number of the car that's parked in there on the decal, so it's specific to that person's car. So no, they cannot sell it.
So if they went use if their car's in the shop and they get a loaner, they can't use what happens then?
For an extra $5 when you apply, or even anytime in the future, for an extra $5 you can get an additional car decal. You just can't park both cars in the lot at the same time. So if it's in the shop, they can get for $5 for that small period of time. They can get another decal for that.
Yeah,
for that
the ordinance specifically says that they're not transferable.
Yes.
But they're also annual fees. So, and that was the idea. In fact, if you purchase after June 30th, then you get it for half price. But other than that, it's an annual fee. It's not transferable.
And the gentleman who's making the request, it's because he lost his job or he changed jobs. What was the issue?
I think because of the COVID situation, their job situation changed, and it was uncertain, and they have not used it since like February, like middle of February.
I guess what I'm getting at is it because he's working from home or he's not working at all?
It's she. It's a she.
Yeah, okay. I think it's. I'm not. I think it's because. Let me look at the email.
Yeah, I think I remember it being working from home.
I think working at home as well. Yeah.
Worked in New York City, but she hasn't been able to use it as her offices have closed and her job status is now uncertain.
So yeah.
But uncertain, it doesn't say she's fired. I mean, she may get called back to work.
Yeah, as New York's opening up today, they may all be back in their office next week or next month.
Yeah, and then
I'd certainly be sympathetic if they had been laid off, fired, but I would want to know more detail.
yeah, it just says it's uncertain.
I mean, with 80 of them out, I just don't want to set a
precedent. Yeah. Anybody else?
I'm sympathetic to this type of request, but I'd want to know. Maybe we can ask her. You've been furloughed. Is what's the what is the actual job status?
Okay.
Building up.
We'll just see if we can get more information.
I think we also have to codify a policy, just to be clear, because when you sign up for something, you want to know what you're going to forfeit if you cancel at any particular time. I think it just makes good sense. I mean, a precedent, Jack, has been not to do anything, but I'd rather have something black and white.
Well, it's an annual permit too. The implication is that you're buying it for the year.
Okay, in that case,
you don't sell monthly permits or, weekly
all right, yeah, in that case, I'd be a no.
Is that in our ordinance? Is it an ordinance?
Well, it's called an annual permit. So, and like I say, historically, requests have been denied.
Okay.
Do we sell monthly permits?
No.
No, if you don't, that's when you use the metered ones. If you're not going.
Yeah, if you purchase after June 30th, then you get half price.
Right. And we added also, if you purchase after October 1st, now you get a quarter of the price. We added that like maybe a year or so ago by resolution.
Yeah, it's not in the ordinance.
Yeah, that was a resolution. But yeah, we only sell the annual, and if they want to park there daily, then yes, they use the kiosk.
So maybe consistent with Councilman Donahue's saying, let's have a policy for this. Maybe we should offer a quarterly or a monthly pass that would be more expensive than the annual pass, but would provide people with flexibility that wish to have it.
Now, the other thing to remember is this ordinance goes back to when there were waiting lists to get parking decals for the train station.
Yeah, there were.
Really?
But if we're going to change our policies and procedures, I think we should consider monthly or quarterly options at differential amounts, which would then people can pay for flexibility then.
Right, you get a discount for buying the annual.
Yeah. So on this particular one, are we going to hold to the annual, or do you want to just know what the status of her job is first?
Maybe we could ask for some more detail, I guess. Would that be all right?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, if she's claiming a hardship, maybe then we could consider it under that scenario. I don't know.
Living home, saving money. Okay, so we'll see if we can get some more information. Moving on to 6D. This is our draft temporary outdoor dining and outside display permit. Thank you, Jeff, for putting this together so quickly. Anybody have any comments, questions on that?
Let's get it approved and hopefully get this moving so people can start opening in and very soon, starting the 15th and the 20th.
Get it on the website tomorrow morning because we will be opening on Monday.
Yep.
Yeah, that is the plan, to get it on the website with your PowerPoint, Chad. Try and get it on the front page. I've had 5 restaurants requesting it already today.
Great.
So it's going to happen.
I thought it was a really nice streamlined process.
Yep. Kudos, kudos to you and Ralph and the chief. I really appreciate you stepping up and making that happen quickly. And I love how simple the form is. So thank you to all involved that put that together.
Okay.
Just for information, Bedminster has a similar process, and they're charging $200.
Yeah. So for those, we have quite an audience now over the pool and the tax thing. So for those of you who are listening, please look at the borough site tomorrow. We have the new form for outdoor dining and commerce that's going out, as well as instructions that sort of overview it in sort of principle. So I'm excited to get that going.
All right, 6E. This is Ralph You're opening, you opened today, right? We opened the,
Yes, we did. The borough has a full administrative staff on hand, and this is a policy that was put together by our HR representative in Bob Clark's office, and it's before you to take a look at, agree, tweak, change. As I said to Lisa Barry Quick, who prepared this, this is a living document that can be changed, modified, added to, subtracted to as we go along. So, but in order to be a policy, Jack, the council, an official policy, the council has to adopt this, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
I'm assuming that this has been reviewed by all the relevant parties that were necessary.
This is this was prepared by our labor attorney.
Labor attorney. That was that was the one I was referring to. So
yeah, her specialty, and that's who we work with.
we need a motion to accept this policy.
I'll move it.
Please.
Do you have a second?
What was the policy? I saw the two graphics that said what people should do, but I didn't see a policy.
No, it's written. It's in
Page 44.
Yep.
Page 44 of your package.
Oh,
44 to 47.
Okay, I must have missed it. All right, thank you.
Okay. So we had a motion and a second. Yes?
I didn't hear a second. I heard Chad did the motion.
I'll second.
Okay, can we just do a voice vote on this, Jack?
Yes.
Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
No, we're good. Okay. We're up to mayor's update. June 4th, the New Jersey League of Municipalities had a webinar on the new NJEDA funding. There was $50,000 that they put out for small businesses. So I got that information on the webinar and passed it on to the small businesses. I think 15,000 is set aside for opportunity zones, but the rest is for anybody that didn't qualify in the first round. So hopefully some of our businesses will be able to access that funding. Saturday, we had a really peaceful peace and justice protest that was very well attended, and big kudos to Chief Valentine and our police staff who did an outstanding job of being helpful and supportive. They blocked off the section of 202 between Claremont and Mount Airy to allow people to get off the sidewalks and keep it safe. So a big thank you to our police staff who did an outstanding job and a very peaceful, moving event. And also, Ed English did a great job with the farmers market on Saturday. Sunday, there was a virtual video for justice and peace that the Interfaith Community Action Network did. The Attorney General was there, our prosecutor, Congressman Malinowski, Senator Bateman. I mean, it was just clergy members. It was a really nice tribute that they did online. I have been invited by the freeholders to serve on the Somerset County Economic Recovery Task Force. Our first meeting will be next week. It consists of two mayors, two freeholders, Walter Lane, who's the county planning department, Tony Cava, who's the president of, and I always call it Somerset Medical Center, but it's not. It's Robert Wood Johnson something. And Chris Edwards from the Somerset County Business Partnership and some corporations and businesses. So I'm looking forward to that. We will be sending an application to the DOT to ask permission to close 202 between Claremont and Mount Airy on Friday nights. See if we can't let those restaurants move their tables out into the street and have more of an open public space. I know Morristown asked to close part of 24 or turned down, but we'll see. Hopefully we'll get a better response. I did hear from, I think, 4 of you about a vision plan meeting on the 29th. That's the fourth Monday of the month. I heard from Jeff, Christine, Jack, and John. I don't know if the rest of you are available, but that was with our two facilitators from Rutgers. So if you could please let me know if you will be available. The graduation banners will go up on Monday. The road department will be putting them up, and I also asked the movie theater to put on their marquee as well, congratulations, class of 2020. And our road department will be helping to get those letters up. So it will be up for about 2 weeks. And tomorrow morning, we have the Planning Partners Forum at 8 o'clock. And then we will announce our participation in Complete Streets. So that is my report. And also I am making an appointment of Rob Wilson as an environmental commission member on the recommendation of the chair, Johanna Wissinger. I think he's been going to all their meetings already and very enthusiastic. And so I will be appointed, and there was one vacancy left. So he will be the new member. Anthony, you'll send him something to.
Well, yeah.
Okay. Do we have any correspondence? I don't think we did.
I didn't get any.
Unfinished business. Do you have anything that's hanging over? I think you do, Chad. Yes.
Sorry, I muted myself. So just a bit about the planning board. I think I've mentioned this for at least the last 4 or maybe 5 meetings, so it's been several months. The planning board is still working in an exceptionally slow pace at the zoning overlay for the revitalization plan. I wanted to have a little discussion with the council about how long. So we let them deliberate. So there's a point where I think the council has to take this up and move this piece of legislation forward because it's important to our town. And I guess what I'm initially proposing is that we limit the amount of time. And I put some framework around how long I'm willing to let the planning board deliberate before we just take this up and start deliberating at the council. Because, you know, for example, in just the last meeting, we went over, I think, 3 paragraphs in about 2 hours of a 47-page document. So wanted to get everyone else's take on this before I went to the meeting on Thursday and either push them to move to completion or provided either, you know, other guidance.
And this was the design standards that we already saw.
Yes.
So I support the idea that we should put a goal or a deadline on this, in the sense that, you know, this is something that I think is important to the borough, important to our revitalization downtown. And so it should take the amount of time that it needs to take to be done correctly.
Yes.
But I think that we also want to make sure that we're not unnecessarily delaying it.
I think part of Chad, as you mentioned, is that, you know, we paid Common Ground to do this, to do the study, to do the report, and what's happening is I think the planning board is shifting it back to all our old standards. Yeah. Is that kind of where they're going?
In some areas, it's more, there's what I consider to be protracted deliberation that I think should be more expeditious. At least, and that's my current opinion. I think we need to start moving forward. And I think anytime you do anything, there should always be an expectation of when we finish work on something.
Do they have a deadline?
They do not. And as things continue to pile onto their agenda, things continue just to push down. And I'm afraid that if we don't put some framework around it, will be, let's just say several meetings ago, I said, you know, I was hoping this would be done in 2 meetings, and I think we've already passed that threshold.
Do they ever put on special meetings when things are important?
No.
Jack,
So,
do we have to give
that's a good
suggestion?
I'm sorry, too, if you were speaking at once, sorry.
I was going to ask Jack regarding MLUL. Is there a requirement that we have to give them a certain amount of time, or can we, I mean, they're essentially reviewing something at our request.
You do not have to give them a certain amount of time. In fact, under the MLUL, an ordinance can be initiated either at the planning board or at the council. The only requirement is that if the council introduces a zoning ordinance, it has to refer it to the planning board, as we discussed earlier, to review for consistency with the master plan, and they have 35 days to act. But there's no legal requirement that you send an ordinance to the planning board prior to introduction.
And I want to be careful that the message isn't incorrect here. I'm not, I very much value the planning board's input in this. What I'd like to do is just put some expectations around when we expect it to come out. And what I'd like to do is, in a conversation, maybe with Frank, and maybe with Bob, the chair, ask what is reasonable, negotiate what's reasonable. And in my mind, we have a meeting on Thursday. It needs to be done either this Thursday or at the very latest the following Thursday. So that way we have this piece of legislation to deliberate on and move into law, or make the ordinance to get this done.
But the other piece of that is, we're in the process now of doing the redevelopment plan for Quimby Village.
Yep.
And we really need those guidelines to be incorporated into this plan.
I know.
And they'll hold up that whole process as well.
Yep.
To Councilman Hammond's suggestion, could we ask them for the information within, a certain number of days? And if they can't provide it within that number of days, ask them to add additional meetings, one per week until they get it to us.
And that's sort of that's what I'll discuss with Frank, Tom. So if it can't be done this Thursday, can we add a special meeting to get this done?
And I would even say that the expectation from the council is that they'll meet weekly. If they can't get it done by the original goal, then they need to add meetings weekly until they get it done. Something along those lines. Just a suggestion. Yeah, I mean, literally. I think we've gone through 13 or 14 pages of this document, and I want to say that we've spent 4 or 5 meetings out of going 13 pages out of 47. So it sounds like some general alignment. Let me have a discussion with Bob and Frank and figure out the right path here to get this in front of us quickly.
And you do have Keith from Common Ground in on those discussions?
Yeah, I brought Keith into Common Ground after the last meeting because it felt like we were just going around in circles. Mm-hmm. And the point was, so as you know, Common Ground wrote this, and they're also going to speak with us when we deliberate on this. I felt it was important that they understood the perspective of why Common Ground wrote things the way that they did. So that way, for 2 reasons, I wanted to hear the way that the planning board would deliberate around Common Ground's proposal, but I also wanted the planning board to understand why Common Ground was making the proposal that they were.
Yeah, no, that was a good idea. Thank you for doing that. I think that'll help the process.
Could we do like joint meetings with them, or open it up and say, listen, if you can't get it done by the next 30 days, then you're welcome to come to council meetings and talk to us. Otherwise,
I think that's part of the consideration, to be honest. We've talked about doing a special working meeting, or probably several, because there's multiple ordinances which are related for the downtown revitalization. So I believe that having some representation from our internal boards may be valuable. So I guess that's my way of saying yes. I agree.
Well, let us know how you make out with that conversation.
All right, I will.
There. Any other unfinished business? You have any new business?
I have one small piece of new business, and it's so Jeff and I and the mayor, we were going around and working with Jeff on this project for reopening downtown. And I think we need to consider as a town, and this is a 2021 consideration, but I understand how slow things can move at times. I'd like to see if we could get a quote for what a downtown manager would cost and how that would be funded. I know that Somerville got one initially, and other places where there was an official person that was in charge of marketing as well as organizing a lot of the stuff that we've been doing by hand recently. And I know that we have volunteers helping as well to see if we can find a more efficient path. So I just wanted to ask if there was an appetite to get a quote and to understand a little more, maybe have 2 proposals come in as to how this may work, so that way we could contemplate it.
I think what you're talking about is like an improvement district kind of.
Yeah.
Because that's what Somerville has, and I think Morristown and Westfield and Cranford and those kind of towns.
I think Olivia Manning had sent us a proposal, I want to say maybe it was about a year ago, that talked about a downtown manager, I think it was part of a special improvement district. And
Yes.
we looked at it at the time, and I think that was something we considered. I don't know, it comes with, the designation of special improvement district comes with fees, I think, or incremental taxes associated with it.
It's an assessment, right?
So I think at the time we put it on the back burner, but maybe it's time to revisit. I certainly would support evaluating the idea.
All I'm suggesting is we evaluate the idea, and especially so look, I think about some of the hurdles that we had just getting a simple moving outdoors up and running in a quick amount of time. We have an entire revitalization project which may transform a lot of our downtown. So I think we just need at least to consider these types of things. So that's all I'm asking.
I think what they do is a feasibility study to see if it's something that would work in our town. So so I'll talk to Olivia and see if we can't get maybe some people to give us a presentation on how that works, if that's okay.
I mean, because isn't that what the chamber is supposed to do?
No, no, they don't. Actually, the chambers, most towns that have, I think chambers are kind of going out of the way of the dinosaur in a lot of ways, because most of the towns, I think there's 100 towns in New Jersey that have improvement districts that are run by a manager, like a management company. There's so much more going on now to do a downtown that the chamber is all volunteers, and a lot of what they do is networking with each other and, you know, kind of putting ads together and that kind of thing, but they're not doing, like a downtown improvement district does activities and events and a whole lot. You know, they reach out to you know, work through realtors to try and fill empty storefronts. It's a whole another, you know, it's a lot more than you can ask of volunteers, and chambers are volunteers and they're running businesses besides. So
yeah, I'm just wondering, can we at least poll them? I mean, the chamber has a whole bunch of businesses.
Well, no,
downtown Bernardsville has a bunch of businesses. Can we just see what their interest would be before, like?
Yeah, well, that's what the feasibility study does. If you just ask them, hey, do you want a new tax? They're going to say no. But I think you need to really have somebody that's a professional explain to them what this is.
Well, yeah, and what services they would get and for what, and you know.
Yeah.
And then we would have to judge public opinion and see if it made sense.
Yeah. And
I'd certainly want to know what the job description is. I would agree with you that we probably rely way too much on volunteers. And to their credit, they do a great job, but it's also inconsistent. But on the other hand, I mean, I know if we're going to be developing this Quimby Village downtown concept, I don't know what role the developer is going to play in doing some of the jobs that you call managing that you know, we may not have to hire a manager. I don't know. I need to understand it better.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm sitting too. I want to understand what the options are, Jeff.
Yeah, I don't understand the role and responsibility for sure, and the, you know, the return on the investment, right? I mean, obviously, is what the business owners would want to know.
that's what I'm saying. If we just have somebody come, a couple of these companies that do this, come and explain how this works and how they could do the research to find out if this is something that we would need, I think it would be worth pursuing.
Mayor, I thought in the Finance Committee meeting on May 22nd that we talked about a study like this that had a similar goal and objective. And is it separate from what Councilman McQueen's talking about?
No, I think it's the same thing.
Yeah.
So we already incorporated it into the budget.
There's money in the budget for it, yes.
Oh yeah, so I think our two worlds collided when I was trying to put through all this stuff, and I asked the question, you know, we should have a town marketer, which you know, there's a point where we're going to get large enough when we may need that type of a person.
Yeah, so I will just, I know we had the one company, we were looking for another company. I will ask them if they can find time, you know, both of them to do a presentation. You can ask them all the questions and decide if it's something you want to pursue, if that's okay with everybody.
Right, so we'd be asking for proposals is essentially what we'd be doing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, explain how it works and what they can do for us to make that happen or not. And then it's your decision.
And the borough would be picking up the bill for the feasibility study or the proposals?
We would pay for the feasibility study.
After we see the proposal,
yeah.
we would decide if we want to pay
Yes.
for it.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. I just wanted to know, I just wanted to make sure that it was us
Yeah.
that was going to do it, not asking the business
Matter of
owners
fact,
to.
I had a call from Ann Peterson this week from Friends for a Greener Bernardsville, who told me that they are no longer going to maintain the Millicent Fenwick Park and the slope by the parking lot across from the fire company because they just don't have enough funds or enough volunteers, and that cost them about $7,000. And could we pick that up? And I was like, I don't know what we're going to do. Because that, again, was all an all volunteer, all donation organization, and they just don't have that anymore. So,
Yeah, Tom, I was thinking a 2021 budget item, so I didn't know you had money in the budget. So, it makes sense at least to listen and figure out what this is all about. In my mind.
Okay. Any other new business?
Well, I had something I wanted to raise. Well, this is, I'd asked to have this put on the agenda, and it didn't make it on. And this is about the LGBT question. And I sent out the proposed resolution to the other council members, so at least they would be aware of what we're talking about. I understand it's a hot button issue, and we voted on it actually unanimously last year not to do it in terms of flying the LGBT pride flag and honoring June as the LGBT month. But I think we ought to relook at that this year, and that was my premise. And I think in light of recent issues related to bias and intolerance, and then the fact that the mayor's putting together the diversity advisory committee, I think this is an opportune moment to take a step. And I want to divide out the two issues. One is the flying of the flag, which I realize is probably not something that I want to pursue. I agree with you. I talked with a couple of the council people and agree with them that if we do that for one organization, that opens us up to requiring to do it for others. But I do think that we ought to acknowledge June as LGBT month. I crafted a sample resolution. If you take out the words about the flying the flag, hopefully people would want to consider that. It had been done by presidential proclamation for the 8 years of Obama, and then Trump did it in 2019, but has not done it this year. And I'd like to propose that and throw that out. I'm not quite sure how that's done.
That's a question, Jeff. Like the designation, does that come from like Congress, or I know there's other months that, is it like an official, like, a federal thing, or is it like, do they, each whatever group would come adopt a month as theirs? How's that work?
Yeah, it's not done by Congress. It actually started in 1999, I believe, by Clinton. It's done by the president. So it's not sponsored by a particular organization, and it's not an official holiday, if you will, by Congress.
No, but it's got a presidential kind of like seal of approval. It's not, just something
that's correct.
Gotcha.
As I mentioned, it was done last year by Trump, but not this year. So it's done pretty much at the pleasure of the president.
I don't recall voting against that flag last year.
We did. The argument was the flag was actually donated by the Democratic LGBT caucus. And we had two reasons. One was we didn't want to do anything that was partisan. And the other was that if we flew that flag, then any other advocacy group could ask, and we would then have to vote on that.
But it never came to a vote.
Huh? It was a consensus.
It didn't come.
Yeah, it was. We voted.
Yeah, we did.
We voted.
Okay,
So
well, I'd like to propose that we do raise the flag and do adopt the resolution.
Yeah, I'm not. Look, I generally feel that as a local borough, we shouldn't, other than the American flag, the state flag, and I think we have a veterans flag. To Jeff's point, if we fly one, I think we open ourselves up to fly anything. But I think acknowledgement through similar to what I think Mary Jane did today with Tourette's syndrome, for me is not a bad thing. And if you got one, I'm willing to put one on my lawn.
Well, I sent it to you by email. Oh, you mean the flag? I thought the resolution. Yeah, I've worked for companies that fly it, but the companies can do that. As a government, we have to, we're in a different position. We can't unilaterally make decisions that are value-based necessarily. So I'm willing to withdraw the proposal that we fly the flag, but I would like to move forward on the resolution I crafted with a modification of the last clause.
I'd go for that. I mean, yeah, I think it's appropriate and measured.
We can't even display the flag for one day.
No. Once you do it for one, you have to do it then one day for someone else. That's the problem. And it's fun. Last year they printed in the paper that we did say we would fly the flag, and I got like 3 calls within the next week of other organizations who wanted their flags flown. And I said, no. We said no.
Can you tell us which organizations those were? I mean, I'm generally in agreement with what you're saying, Mayor, but I just interested in who the groups were that followed up on that.
I think one was some disabled group, and another was it was another like political kind of thing. Like that was a caucus. It was a Republican caucus, and then there was, I forget what the other one was, but.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Should I read the resolution so it's on the record, and then we can vote on it?
Find it here. Yes, please read it.
Okay, so this is doesn't have a title specifically, but whereas the members of the LGBT community are an important part of the diversity of Bernardsville, and whereas Bernardsville is a welcoming community which prides itself in its fairness and inclusion, and whereas Bernardsville is committed to supporting visibility, dignity, and equality for all people in the community, and whereas Bernardsville recognizes the contributions made by LGBT residents, business people, and visitors, and whereas celebrating Pride Month acknowledges the ongoing need for dialogue, education, and awareness to combat discrimination and prejudices, and whereas June is historically recognized as LGBT Pride Month, now therefore be it resolved, and this is where I had mentioned that we would fly the flag, but I'll withdraw that part, that Bernardsville will participate in the celebration of LGBT Pride Month during the month of June 2020.
I would support that.
Well, if Jeff moves it, you need a second, then you can take a vote.
Yeah.
So I'll move that. Okay.
Okay, do we need a roll call? Let's just
You can do a voice vote.
voice vote. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay.
Thank you. So Anthony, I'll send you that in writing, I guess.
Yes.
I don't think you got it.
Yeah, number 166. I will give it. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I don't think we have any executive, do we?
I don't.
No?
No.
Oh, you know what? Didn't we have to accept the concept plan? That's unfinished business. For 261 Mine Brook?
Did we ever get tax information, Tom?
So the response I got was that if we transfer anything more than 0.49 acres, there would be the potential, and there's other amounts, 1 acre or 1.5 acre, where it would be highly unlikely that the owner of lot 27 would be able to get a farm assessment, even at that higher 1 acre or 1.5 acre amount. That would make it highly unlikely that he would qualify. Transferring anything more than 0.49 acres that 0.49 or less would be the only amount that would guarantee that the property would not reach the 5 acre minimum that would allow for what do you call it? Farm assessment, I guess.
Farmland assessment, yes.
Farmland assessment. The flip side would be that, we would sell it only for a price that was equal to the net present value of the stream of foregone taxes, which would end up being a pretty large number.
So if we want to move forward with the subdivision, what you're saying is we don't want to cut off that piece in the corner?
I think we can, but then ultimately, I think the council would have to determine whether or not the sale price justified giving up that property. And I think that's what the answer to the tax question was, whether or not, how much would the revised assessment be? That answer came out. I don't know if everybody saw it, that it would be a difference of about $3,000 a month at the current tax rates and the current valuations. Of course, future tax rate, future valuation, TBD. That's if you just went with what was in the drawing.
You meant $3,000 a year, yes?
Per year, yes, that's correct. It would be $3,000. We would collect $3,000 per year less than we're collecting at currently. So that was a hypothetical given the drawing that we saw. The next question that we asked our Ed Kerwin, our tax assessor, was, well, is there an amount we can transfer that would leave the tax revenues unchanged? And the effective answer was 0.49 acres or less. There's some gray area in between 0.49 and some other number.
So there's really no point. It's either, the way it was currently drawn or not. Then that's sort of my take, Tom.
Well, my point is, if we want to expedite the process, we could leave it in at the number that it's at, and then, in a world that there is a number, that you could sell it at that would be financially wise to do it, I imagine.
Yep.
That number may not be attractive to the owner of lot 27, but going forward with the way it's drawn, doesn't force us to do anything.
I agree.
It just gives us the option. It's just, to me, given the circumstances and the discussion I've heard to date, I don't know that that's going to actually end up in a transfer that's going to be agreeable to both parties.
Yeah. Now, the survey will be more for that extra lot.
The expense of doing the survey for that lot, you mean?
The land survey.
And how, do you have an order of magnitude? Obviously not a direct number.
I'm sorry, but it would be more. We can ask the 4-hour firm, because they'd be surveying, for a quote for both.
Well, I think what we need to do tonight is approve the concept plan that we got from John Szabo. Yes, so we can get the survey done. We need to authorize the survey, which we couldn't do until we approved the concept plan, isn't it?
That's true. The concept plan. I think there were the two items. One was whether we want to include the 2.64.
Right.
But what I'm hearing from Jack Pigeon is that if we do just the 8.68 and not the 2.64, it might be somewhat less expensive than if we ask them to do three pieces total.
Right.
So I think the council has to determine whether we want to do 3 pieces or 2 pieces. And the other question, which we didn't bring up yet, but still is in the front of my mind, is, I want to have an easement that we can share the driveway if on the 8.68 acres. And I don't know if that.
Right.
No, I think we decided that was the right choice, especially at first, right?
Yeah, we have to do that because we won't get the entrance in on the other side. We won't be able to get to our property without that easement. So.
Right, but I would like a perpetual easement. We can always give up our right to it at some point in the future.
Yeah.
I'd like it to be a perpetual easement to begin with, and then, a year or two into it, we decide we don't need it. We can let it go then.
Right, but we need to. So the concept plan was the 8 point whatever with the
6.8
with the driveway easement, and then should we 1 subdivision or 2?
So the question, I guess, is do we drop off the 2.64 acres? Because if the council feels that they're not going to transfer it under any circumstances, then I guess we don't need to incur the expense.
So any opinions on?
I would say go 2, because it saves us money. And to be frank, to be fiscally responsible, we should sell it for the NPV of the future cash, So it's, and I can't imagine that'll be an attractive price, as Tom said.
Yeah, 2 pieces instead of 3.
But how do you compute the net present value of something that goes on in perpetuity?
Well, they discount stocks that way. I guess they look at cash flows going out. There's a way to do it, but it'll yield a large number, especially with discount rates very low right now.
Yeah, but I mean, what we'd have to do is we'd have to say we're giving up 100 years or 200 years of revenue if we transfer that. How do we calculate that?
Well, I think John was saying only do 2. Yeah, he's agreeing with you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, why don't we? I mean, we don't know or do we? Maybe you can help me out here. Do we know the intent of the owner of Lot 27? Was he or she trying to pursue farmland exemption, or they just wanted more land for their backyard? Do we know?
I think
Yeah.
partial.
According to the assessor, the property owner is seeking additional land so he can have a farmland assessment on
Okay,
5 acres.
so he is specifically, or she is specifically trying to reduce their taxes, which definitely impacts us as a community. So I would not be in favor of that.
I'm not either.
If, let's say, we wanted to do it down the road, we could.
No, because once we buy that money, once we buy that land with open space dollars, it's locked up.
Yep. Then we have to go through a diversion with Green Acres, which
It would be impractical after that.
Gina?
Yep, I'm not in favor of the tax cut or the farmland assessment.
Okay.
So, sorry, I didn't get a chance, but so my only point to put it in favor is if somebody offered us $1 million for it, you know, that would be a motivating factor for me. So, you know, if it costs us $1,500, I don't know, you know, that would be the only mitigating factor.
What are the odds, huh?
Well, I don't know.
Really want to farm.
I don't know at all, to tell you the truth.
why don't we ask the Ferraro firm, and if you want to get other quotes, alternate proposals to do a 2-lot or a 3-lot subdivision, and then you can make a determination.
I think the key is we don't want to slow things down here.
Yeah.
But either you're going to have to approve a proposal to do the subdivision.
I'm sorry, what was the question? What's that, Jack?
You'll have to approve a contract to perform prepare the subdivision plan.
So what you're saying is in the same amount of time, we can get 2 quotes.
Yeah,
Then we can make
so.
We can make the decision on whether it's 3 pieces or 2 pieces.
Right. You know, if it's only $500 difference, it may be worth it. If it's $3,000, maybe not.
Okay.
I think it's fine.
So we'll just authorize Ralph to contact Farrar to get the quotes, the kind of like based on the concept plan we had.
Yes, with the easement.
Right.
Okay. I just want to kind of keep this moving. I don't want it to.
Yep.
I agree. Let's keep it moving.
Yeah. Okay, that was my only other thing. That was actually unfinished business.
So what did we decide? Just some a lot of conversation back and forth.
Proposals for what the difference is to do the survey for 2 pieces and 3 pieces, and see actually how much it's going to cost us. If it's a minimal amount, you know, we could still have the survey done.
Right, because we wouldn't have to sell that 3rd lot.
Okay.
We could keep it. We just wouldn't get Green Acres money if we keep it for us. But
Which would have to be a consideration. Yeah.
No, we could. If we kept it for us, we could get Green Acres money.
oh, even if it's subdivided, that's right. We
Right,
could.
doesn't matter if it's subdivided.
Right.
It would only be if we sold it.
Right.
Obviously, then we wouldn't need it.
Yeah. Okay. So if it's not a whole big difference to do 2 or 3.
Right.
Okay. So we will get those as we can. All right. So we'll see you all Friday. Yes. 5 o'clock. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move.
I'll second.
There's no open session?
What?
Do we have closed session, she asked?
No.
No.
All in favor?
No, there wasn't another open
Oh,
session.
I'm sorry,
I think
second
she
open
was
session?
asking. Yeah.
We don't have a second, only for the second meeting.
Yes, that's correct.
So where were we? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. All right. We are adjourned.
All right. Good night,
Good
everybody.
night, everybody.
Good night.